Chapter 1073. Here's your chance. Qin Shing had to go to Ningbo to send the old lady off for the last time. Moreover, there were so many people in Shenzhen, so Qin Shing didn't need to worry too much. He could control things here by phone. After all, he didn't need to show up here, unless he needed to meet some big shots, which could be delayed until he came back. Fang Tianai and Hao Mingyi could tell that it was an urgent matter. Otherwise, Qin Shing wouldn't go to Shenzhen at this time. After they met, Hao Mingyi said, "Qin Shing, since it's urgent, go ahead. I'll take care of the company. Don't worry." Fang Tianai also said, "Although it's not appropriate for you to leave at this time, it's an urgent matter after all. Otherwise, you wouldn't be so anxious. Don't worry. I'll keep an eye on other things." "Uncle Hao, Brother Fang, I'll leave Shenzhen to you," Qin Shing said sincerely. At this time, Fang Tianai said, "Since you're going tomorrow, you don't have to hurry. You have to drink with us tonight." What else could Qin Shing say? No matter what, it was a welcoming dinner for Uncle Hao. It was not appropriate for him to leave when it just started. He could only risk his life to accompany them. Therefore, Qin Shing raised his glass and gave a toast to Fang Tianai and Hao Mingyi. Because Qin Shing suddenly had an urgent matter, he didn't seem to be in a good mood. Therefore, the dinner didn't last long. After finishing a bottle of wine, everyone left. Qin Shing went back to the hotel directly. Fang Tianai dragged Hao Mingyi to drink with him for the second round. As for where they went, Qin Shing did not care. Fang Tianai muttered that he had to be a good host, so Qin Shing did not care. After Qin Shing left the restaurant, he asked Chang Baji to inform the others to go back to the hotel. In fact, He Wei, Fu Rong, and Hao Lei were all his confidants. Since Qin Shing left suddenly, he naturally had to handle things in Shenzhen well. Otherwise, he would be worried even if he went to Ningbo. When Qin Shing returned to the hotel, Fu Rong, He Wei, and Hao Lei were already there. They were waiting for him in his suite. They did not know why Qin Shing called them back in such a hurry. Did something big happen again? After Qin Shing sat down, he looked at the others and said, "I have something to tell you." Hao Lei asked subconsciously, "Did something happen again?" Fu Rong and He Wei were also worried. If anything were to happen, Shenzhen would be in trouble. "No, it's just that I'm going to leave Shenzhen for a few days, so I'm going to arrange things in Shenzhen for you," Qin Shing said honestly. He Wei frowned and said, "Back to Beijing?" Qin Shing shook his head as he said, "No. Why would I go back to Beijing at this time? I just need to go to Ningbo. I might be delayed for a few days. I will leave Shenzhen to you." "To Ningbo?" Hao Lei said in a deep voice. "Did something happen to the Lin family?" Qin Shing let out a long sigh and said, "Old Madame Lin has passed away." After hearing the news, Hao Lei finally understood why Qin Shing suddenly called them back and said that he was going to leave Shenzhen. It turned out that old Madame Lin of the Lin family in Ningbo had passed away. This news was indeed a little too sudden. A few days ago, Qin Shing had said that he would go to Ningbo to visit old Madame Lin. However, he did not expect that the situation in Shenzhen would change so suddenly that Qin Shing was delayed and did not see old Madame Lin for the last time. In this case, it was He Yong, the bastard, who was to blame. If this was really the case, Qin Shing had to go because old Madame Lin was Lin Su's biological grandmother. When old Madame Lin was hospitalized, Qin Shing originally wanted to go, but because of what happened in Shenzhen, he did not go. If old Madame Lin passed away and Qin Shing still did not go, what would Lin Su and the rest of the Lin family think? After coming back to reality, Hao Lei said sincerely, "Then you go. Leave the matters in Shenzhen to us." At this time, Qin Shing made arrangements. "After I leave Shenzhen, Fu Rong and He Wei protect Uncle Hao and the rest. Brother Lei, you and Lao Chong listen to Brother Fang's arrangements. It's better for you to handle some things. Everyone in the Qin family will also listen to your arrangement. If anything unexpected happens, we will contact you by phone." Hao Lei said in surprise, Qin Xing, this is not a good idea. Are you going to Ningbo alone without Lao Chang? At this time, Chang Baji also said, I'd better go to Ningbo with you. It's safer this way. He Wei and Fu Rong also said, if you don't take Lao Chang with you, let us go to Ningbo with you. Otherwise we will be worried. If something really happens, we can't explain it to the old master. Qin Xing said disapprovingly, now Shenzhen is the most short of manpower. I don't know who will be sent by 6th Uncle Long. Lao Chang staying here is also a deterrent. As for you, you have other things to do. Moreover, there will be no danger in Ningbo. After all, Ningbo is the territory of the Lin family. I will only take 2 bodyguards there. Moreover, I will stay in the Lin family most of the time. Moreover, if something really happens, there are friends everywhere in Zhujiang, and we can find reinforcements at any time, right? What Qin Xing had said was true. The Lin family's influence in Ningbo was deep-rooted. Especially after the crisis, the Lin family had been thriving again. Moreover, Qin Xing had so many allies in Zhujiang. As long as he made a phone call, these tycoons would come to him in person. So there was nothing to worry about. Hao Lei said directly, I am still a little worried. Qin Xing chuckled and said, who knows that I will go to Ningbo? You should let Lao Chang go with you, or let He Wei and Fu Rong go with you. Hao Lei was Qin Xing's old friend for so many years, and he naturally considered everything for Qin Xing. Qin Xing continued, you don't trust others, but you don't trust my strength? Qin Xing's strength was far above Hao Lei's. Even Fu Rong or He Wei might not be able to defeat Qin Xing. Therefore, Qin Xing's biggest reliance was himself. Seeing that Qin Xing had made up his mind, they could not persuade him. But after thinking carefully, Qin Xing was right. At this moment, Shenzhen needed manpower the most, and they would be more useful in Shenzhen. Moreover, all the dangers were in Shenzhen, and there would be no danger in Ningbo. Moreover, as Qin Xing said, he had so many friends in Zhujiang, and if something really happened, he could use them at any time. After everything was arranged, Hao Lei and the others left, leaving only Chang Baji in the room. Chang Baji asked again, you really don't need me? Qin Xing said slowly, Lao Chang, Shenzhen needs you more. Chang Baji did not say anything more. After washing up, Qin Xing lay on the bed and immediately sent a video call to his sister. After a while, the video call was connected. On the other side, Qin Ran was lying on the bed, ready to rest. Qin Ran thought that Qin Xing was going to tell her about what happened in Shenzhen, but she did not expect that Qin Xing would directly say, Sister, I have something to tell you. What is it? Qin Ran asked casually. Qin Xing said slowly, Old Madam Lin passed away today, and I have to go to Ningbo. Qin Ran was a little shocked after hearing that. This news was indeed a little sudden. Does Lin Su know? Qin Ran knew that Lin Su went to the United States, and this was also Qin Ran's initiative to tell her. She thought that Lin Su went to the United States because she was sad, but she did not know that Lin Su really wanted to go to the United States. If she knew, would she scold Qin Xing to death? Qin Xing said casually, I haven't asked. I think she already knows, or maybe she is already on her way back. Although Qin Ran was not willing to let Qin Xing go to Ningbo, after all, he had broken up with Lin Su, and it was better for him not to have anything to do with her. Old Madam Lin was Lin Su's grandmother. Lin Su had accompanied Qin Xing for a long time, and old Madam Lin treated Qin Xing very well. According to Qin Xing's character, he definitely wanted to go to Ningbo. Consequently, Qin Ran frowned and said, Do I need to tell Ryu in case she thinks too much when she knows? Qin Xing said, No need. I will come back after seeing old Madam off. She is not a stingy person. If she really knows, I will explain to her. Qin Ran felt a little headache. She could not say much about these things, and had no choice but to say, Do as you see fit. Be careful, go there early and come back early. Qin Xing said yes and hung up the video call. Qin Ran did not think much about it. It did not occur to her that Qin Xing would go there with only 2 bodyguards of the Qin family. She subconsciously thought that Qin Xing would definitely bring Lao Chang with him. After all, Qin Xing would take Lao Chang with him wherever he went. As long as Lao Chang was by his side, Qin Xing would not be in any danger. However, Qin Xing did not bring anyone this time. The next day, Qin Xing got up early in the morning and went to the airport. Chang Baji had selected 2 experienced bodyguards to follow Qin Xing to Ningbo. He also told them to pay more attention in Ningbo and protect Qin Xing no matter what happened. Chang Baji went to the airport in person. He did not leave until Qin Xing entered the airport. However, he did not notice that a car had followed them from the hotel to the airport. In the end, he saw Qin Xing enter the security passage. After walking out of the airport, a middle-aged man in the business car that had followed Qin Xing looked at the old man behind him and asked, "Uncle Ghost, where is the eldest young master of the Qin family going? He did not even bring Chang Baji with him. This is an opportunity for us." The old man's hair covered half of his face. It seemed that his appearance could not be seen clearly. He did not say anything. The middle-aged man in the passenger seat said, "What if he goes back to Beijing?" Uncle Ghost chuckled and said, "Let Old Long check it out. Then we will know." He was none other than the person in charge of assassinating Qin Xing, Old Ghost, who had been sent by Old Long to kill him. After leaving the airport, Old Ghost immediately reported Qin Xing's schedule to Old Long. Old Long was also a little confused. The situation in Shenzhen was critical. Where was Qin Xing going? If Qin Xing was going back to Beijing, they would have no chance. Old Long did not think too much about it. He just asked someone to check it out. About half an hour later, Old Long received a call. The person on the phone said slowly, "Old Long, he went to Ningbo." When Old Long heard the news, he was stunned for a few seconds. Then he smiled happily, because his opportunity had come. Soon, Old Long directly called Old Ghost. After the phone was connected, Old Long said with a smile, "Old Ghost, your opportunity has come." Old Ghost immediately understood what Old Long meant. Obviously, Qin Xing was not going back to Beijing. Otherwise, Old Long would not have said that. But since Qin Xing was not going back to Beijing, why did he not even bring Chang Baji with him? Was he so arrogant? After coming to himself, Old Ghost said with a smile, "Where is he going?" "Ningbo." Old Long sneered. Old Ghost showed a bloodthirsty smile and said, "Got it." Chapter 1074. In order to take revenge on the Qin family, Elder Long had always been willing to pay any price. He did not have much energy to calculate the gains and losses. If he had calculated the gains and losses, he would not have tried to take revenge by almost dying together with his enemies. If he was calculating the gains and losses, he wouldn't have cooperated with Sixth Uncle just to place Qin Chang in a place of death. After all, he was paying with real money. Although it would still belong to him in the end, it was too risky. If he had calculated the gains and losses, Elder Long would not have tried to kill Qin Xing this time. He would rather hurt the enemy and himself than kill the Qin family. It could be seen how cruel and merciless Elder Long was. More importantly, Elder Long was already in trouble this time. He also knew that the Song family and the Zhu family were behind Qin Xing, but he still wanted to do it. It could be seen that he was mentally prepared. Without Chang Baji, Qin Xing had no one to rely on. Old Ghost and 3 of Elder Long's most trusted subordinates were ready for this trip to Ningbo, unless Qin Xing did not give Old Ghost any chance. Qin Xing had told Lin Yu that he would arrive in Ningbo at noon. He did not disturb Lin Changhe because the Lin family was busy, and Lin Changhe had a lot of things to deal with. After all, the Lin family was a big family in Ningbo, and old lady Lin's funeral was the most important thing. Lin Changhe must be busy all the time. However, Lin Yu would definitely find time to tell her father. As for Lin Yu, She was very happy when she received Qin Shing's call. If her sister could not come back, her brother-in-law would send her grandmother off on behalf of her sister, and the other members of the Lin family would not dare to say anything. On the plane, Qin Shing, who did not sleep well last night, closed his eyes to rest. When he got on the plane, he told the stewardess in the first-class cabin not to disturb him. He was not even interested in a beautiful woman who took the initiative to talk to him. He was no longer a young man who had not seen the world. What he was experiencing now was the scenery at a higher level. After all, every road in life was different. After getting off the plane, Qin Shing saw Lin Yu waving at him from afar. It did not occur to him that Lin Yu would come to pick him up at the airport. He was somewhat moved. After seeing Lin Yu, the beauty who had been trying to hit on Qin Shing gave up the idea directly. After all, although Lin Yu was not as beautiful as her sister, she was not inferior to most beauties. Moreover, she was cultivated by the Lin family. In the beginning, Lin Yu was very happy. However, as Qin Shing walked closer to her, the smile on her face gradually disappeared, followed by sadness. When Qin Shing walked up to her, Lin Yu could not help hugging him and crying. She cried and shouted, "Brother-in-law!" Qin Shing knew that Lin Yu was really sad this time. In addition to the sudden death of their grandmother, it was also because their sister could not come back in time. After all, their sister was their grandmother's most beloved granddaughter. Even Lin Yu could only be ranked behind her sister. Qin Shing held Lin Yu in his arms, patted her shoulder gently, and said, "Don't cry, don't cry. Everything will be fine. Grandma definitely doesn't want you to be so sad." After crying for a while, Lin Yu let go of Qin Shing. After all, it was not appropriate to cry in public. Moreover, she had grown up and was not a little girl who knew nothing. Lin Yu wiped her tears away and said calmly, "Brother-in-law, there are many things at home, so my father asked me to come to pick you up. The car is waiting outside." Qin Shing nodded gently and said, "Okay, let's go back." For most people, liking a city was probably because they liked one person. Maybe this city was built because he liked someone. If it were not for Lin Su, it would be hard for him to come to Ningbo in his life, let alone come here so frequently. In the same way, some people might leave a city because they liked one person. This person made them sad, so they left the city. From then on, this city would only be left with their memories. Qin Shing had come to Ningbo several times. Almost every time he came back, he accompanied Lin Su. Although this time he came for the Lin family, Lin Su was not by his side. On the way, Qin Shing asked a lot about Lin Su's situation in Los Angeles. After all, during this period, Lin Yu had been accompanying Lin Su. Lin Yu told him everything that should be said. After all, Qin Shing was her brother-in-law. Moreover, she was the future aunt of the child in her sister's belly. She had to take good care of her sister. Of course, in the end, Lin Yu said that no matter how well her sister lived in Los Angeles, she would not be as happy as her brother-in-law. Therefore, she hoped that her brother-in-law could go to Los Angeles to see her sister when he was free. Qin Shing first thanked Lin Yu for taking care of Lin Su during this period. Secondly, he said that when he was almost done with his domestic affairs, he would definitely go to Los Angeles to see his sister. Lin Yu also knew what had happened in her brother-in-law's family. Now, how many people didn't know what had happened to the Qin family? She often heard many friends talking about the Qin family. Even the online news abroad had related reports. Lin Yu was a little worried several times, because those things had already gone beyond her imagination. After a while, the two cars entered the old house of the Lin family in Ningbo. Unfortunately, the road to the old house was blocked, because there were many cars lining up to enter the old house of the Lin family. Many people directly parked their cars by the roadside and walked in. These people were all going to mourn old Lady Lin. The Lin family could be said to be a century-old family in Ningbo. Although it had many ups and downs, all the famous families in Ningbo had nothing to do with the Lin family, not to mention the entire Yangtze River Delta. This was the accumulation of generations of the Lin family. Moreover, after the storm last year, the Lin family could be said to have made a comeback now. No one dared to look down on the current Lin family. Although the Lin family only informed the immediate and collateral relatives, many people still came to mourn after hearing the news. Many of them drove here from Hangzhou or Shanghai. Although they were all here to mourn old Lady Lin, more people actually wanted to build a good relationship with the Lin family. This was the reality. In this regard, Qin Sheng was not surprised. The Lin family had a history of 100 years. If there were only a few people in the Lin family after old Lady Lin passed away, then the Lin family would really decline. The Lin family had no choice. They were all guests and they couldn't drive them away. Moreover, they were here to mourn old Lady Lin. Among them, there were some big shots in the officialdom. It was just that some of them were still in power and some had retired. Therefore, the Lin family could only slightly strengthen the security. Everyone had to register with their real names before they could go in, so as to ensure that there would be no accident. It should have taken them 2 or 3 minutes to drive, but Qin Sheng and the others walked for a full 20 minutes before they drove to the main gate of the Lin family's old house. Other people who came to mourn could only park their cars in the temporarily opened parking lots on both sides. Only those big shots were qualified to drive directly into the main house of the Lin family. Because there were so many people, the security guards at the gate could not remember so many license plates. Naturally, Qin Sheng's 2 cars were also stopped. However, after the driver lowered the window and chatted for a while, the security guards directly let them in. At the gate everyone muttered, "Tut, tut, tut, the Lin family is really arrogant. If you are not qualified, they won't let you drive in. We are all here to mourn old Lady Lin. This kind of treatment." The man next to him chuckled and said, "Isn't it normal? With so many people coming to mourn, it can't stop inside. Therefore, only big shots can go in. I don't know who is coming. I heard that several leaders of the municipal party committee have come, and some leaders from the province have come to mourn. The Lin family is really different after 100 years. What do you think the Lin family hasn't been through? Last year, they were about to fall, but suddenly they stood up inexplicably and moved their headquarters to Shanghai. I heard that the Lin family moved away because the city did not help them when they were in danger. Even the leaders of the province did not stop them. And I also heard that several leaders of Shanghai attended the moving ceremony of the Lin family's headquarters in Shanghai. Tut, 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 isn't it awesome? Another man shook his head and sighed bitterly. Someone asked curiously, "Do you know how the Lin family got through the crisis and now the momentum is getting stronger and stronger?" I heard that it is because Lin Su, the eldest daughter of the Lin family, found a good son-in-law. It seems that he is the son of a big family in Beijing. He solved the problem of the Lin family very easily, so the Lin family rose again. I don't know if the son-in-law is here this time. We can also see his true face, the man who spoke first said with a smile. No wonder. When can we also reach the status of the Lin family? Someone sighed. The man sneered and said, "First, you have to give birth to a beautiful daughter. Ha ha ha. But I heard that they broke up, didn't they? The son-in-law seems to be the son of Qin Chang'an, the behind-the-scenes boss of the Chang'an group." Another man stood up and said. He knew relatively more information. At this time, a middle-aged man who was more senior said, "These things are far beyond our imagination. Forget it, forget it. Let's go in quickly, in case people hear these gossip." Everyone agreed in unison and did not say anything else. They continued to walk towards the main gate of the Lin clan. The 2 cars that Qin Sheng took soon reached the main building. The mourning hall of the old lady was set in the main hall of the Lin family's main building. The main hall of the main building had already been cleaned up. Fortunately, the main hall was relatively large, otherwise it could not accommodate so many people. Qin Sheng saw people coming and going into the main hall. He did not know how many people came to mourn old Lady Lin sincerely. Maybe only these direct relatives would be sad. However, this was human nature, and Qin Shing could not say anything. If the Lin family collapsed one day, there would not be so many people. After the two cars stopped, Qin Shing and Lin Yu got out of the car. Lin Chongting and Lin Chonghe were welcoming and seeing them off. It was within their expectation that so many people would come to offer their condolences. Unless those tycoons came to offer their condolences, both Lin Chongting and Lin Chonghe would show up. At other times, the two of them would take turns to rest. Therefore, it was Lin Zhe who came to pick Qin Shing up. Lin Zhe had just heard the news. If Lin Chonghe had not asked him to pick Qin Shing up, he would not have known that Qin Shing was coming. Of course, Lin Zhe knew what had happened between Qin Shing and Lin Su, and he also knew that Qin Shing had been engaged to the eldest daughter of the Song family in Beijing. Therefore, he was full of resentment towards Qin Shing. When he walked up to Qin Shing, before Qin Shing greeted him, Lin Zhe questioned him sternly, "What are you doing here?" Chapter 1075. In the past, Lin Zhe had never liked Lin Su. In the past, Lin Zhe had never liked Lin Su. He had always felt that Lin Su was too outstanding, so outstanding that he felt ashamed of himself. At the same time, because of Lin Su's existence, he would get a share of the shares that originally belonged to him in the future. This was because the old lady had decided long ago, so he had been ostracizing Lin Su in all aspects in the Lin family. He had been like this since he was young. In addition, his mother had always been domineering. His father, Lin Chongting, had never dared to be too close to Lin Su. The entire Lin family did not dare to have too much contact with Lin Su. Therefore, Lin Su had been living in the Lin family like this. After all, he was the future successor of the Lin family, the real future master of the Lin family. The rest of the Lin family would naturally choose him. However, Lin Su had never stooped to his level. She would even draw a clear line between them. Sometimes she had to clean up after him. It could be seen how useless Lin Zhe was in the past. He was a standard wastrel. However, Qin Shing's incident had completely woken Lin Zhe up. He suddenly felt that he had been such a beast in the past. Was this something that King Human should do? This was his sister. They were related by blood. Why did he have to treat his sister like this? If someone else had such a sister, they would feel sorry for her. But what about him? Therefore, Lin Zhe started to reflect on himself. It was not only because Lin Su had gotten 40% of the Lin family's shares and became the real current master of the Lin family. It was also not because Lin Su had Qin Shing as her boyfriend. The Qin family had helped the Lin family solve the Lin family's problems, so that the Lin family could get out of the predicament. Of course, these were all reasons. But more importantly, he wanted to change himself. He wanted to make it up to Lin Su for what he had done over the years. Therefore, he really wanted to treat Lin Su as his sister in the future. He wanted to try his best to protect and love his sister. Although Lin Su was already so powerful that she did not need him anymore. But in the end, he was still her brother and she was still his sister. Lin Zhe had thought that it was enough for Lin Su to meet Qin Shing. He also thought that they would definitely grow old together in the end. He believed that Lin Su would be very happy. He also believed that Qin Shing would love Lin Su very much. That was because they had experienced a lot over the years, from getting to know each other, to reuniting, to falling in love, and then breaking through all the obstacles to continue being together. They had suffered a lot and suffered a lot. They deserved to be happy. Especially in the past, Lin Su could give up everything she owned in the Lin family for Qin Shing. This was not something that any girl could do. This was more like a love story in a fairy tale world. However, Lin Su did it. She even took care of Qin Shing in Xiamen for half a year and did so much for Qin Shing. At first, everyone thought that there would be no more accidents and that they would have the best ending. But who would have thought that it would suddenly turn out like this? When Lin Zhe found out that Qin Sheng had broken up with Lin Su and gotten engaged to that woman in Beijing, he was completely furious. He had planned to go to Beijing to confront Qin Sheng, but Lin Changhe had stopped him. Lin Changhe had told him that if he thought it was for Lin Su's good, he should not go to Beijing to confront Qin Sheng. It was their own business. Otherwise, Lin Su would only hate him. He knew that his sister must have gone to the United States because she was sad. He could not do anything about it. After all, he was facing Qin Sheng, who was an enemy that he could not defeat. However, he still did not expect that Qin Sheng would be so shameless to come to Ningbo. What qualifications did he have to see his grandmother off? How could he face her? If she knew this, how sad would she be? Qin Sheng did not expect that this would happen as soon as he got out of the car. However, he had thought that this might happen. Many people in the Lin family might have known about the relationship between him and Lin Su. They might also know that he was engaged to Song Ryu. After all, these things could not be concealed, so he had made preparations before coming here. Lin Zhe was Lin Su's brother, so he was qualified to question him. Qin Sheng had no reason to refute him. No matter what, he was wrong, so he did not have the confidence to answer. Qin Sheng looked at Lin Zhe and shook his head with a bitter smile. Lin Zhe took 2 steps forward and directly grabbed Qin Sheng's collar. Qin Sheng, say something. What qualifications do you have to come to our Lin family? How dare you come here? Qin Sheng's 2 bodyguards of the Qin family immediately stepped forward and were about to beat him. They did not care about Lin Zhe's identity. As long as he dared to beat Qin Sheng, they would not be polite. Qin Sheng waved his hand to signal them to leave it alone. He forcibly pulled Lin Zhe's hand away. Lin Zhe was no match for him at all, so he had to let go of it. Qin Sheng said slowly, "You are angry with me. In the future, I won't fight back if you want to beat or scold me. But today I hope you can control yourself, whether it is for the Lin family or for Lin Su. Who do you think you are? This is our Lin family. It is not your place to tell us what to do." Lin Zhe also lost his temper. He had been holding back for a long time. Now that he finally met Qin Sheng, how could he miss this chance? The commotion here was so big that it had already attracted the attention of the Lin family and other people who had come to pay their respects to old Madame Lin. Everyone knew Lin Zhe was the future successor of the Lin family, but no one knew who the man opposite Lin Zhe was. However, who could have caused Lin Zhe to lose his temper today? After all, this was old Madame Lin's funeral. No matter what, Lin Zhe had to restrain himself. Moreover, everyone who came was here to pay respects to old Madame Lin. No matter how much hatred and resentment Lin Zhe had, he had to suppress it. Therefore, everyone began to point fingers and discuss this matter. At this time, Lin Changhe happened to send an elder friend out. When he saw this scene, he felt a headache. He tried his best to suppress the relationship between Lin Su and Qin Sheng, because he did not want to cause too much trouble to the Lin family at this time. He did not expect that Lin Zhe would act recklessly again. However, he could understand Lin Zhe's mood. After sending this elder friend out, Lin Changhe walked over quickly and said angrily, "Lin Zhe, what are you doing? Let go of my hand." When Lin Zhe saw Lin Changhe walking over, he shouted helplessly, "Second uncle." Lin Changhe stared at Lin Zhe sharply and said, "No matter how important it is, you have to wait until after your grandma's funeral. If you dare to act recklessly again, don't blame me for being impolite." What else could Lin Zhe say? He could ignore Qin Sheng, but he dared not to ignore his second uncle. He had to send Qin Sheng here with his teeth clenched. Qin Sheng did not feel embarrassed. He looked at Lin Changhe guiltily and said, "Second uncle, I'm sorry." Lin Changhe, of course, knew what Qin Sheng meant. He patted Qin Sheng's shoulder and said, "Go to worship the old lady first." Before he left, he was talking about you and Lin Su. If he could see you for the last time, he would feel relieved. Qin Shing did not explain anything, and he did not know what to say. He just nodded and followed Lin Changhe into the main hall of the Lin family's main building. The main building of the Lin family had been changed into the old lady's mourning hall. All the wreaths and other things were placed on the two walls outside. Many famous people's names could be seen. After all, the Lin family was quite influential in the Yangtze River Delta these years. Besides, this was also the result of the efforts of several generations of the Lin family. Qin Shing followed Lin Changhe into the main hall. The main hall had been decorated solemnly. The old lady's big black and white photo was hung on the wall. Below the photo was the old lady's ice coffin, which was surrounded by countless white and yellow flowers. There were also many wreaths on both sides of the wall. The Lin family must have put wreaths in the mourning hall. Those who came to pay their respects to the old lady would naturally understand what it meant when they saw it. For those great families from ancient times until now, such a funeral was no longer just a funeral. It was also a time for a family to strengthen itself and pave the way for the future of the family. This was understandable. This kind of scene was even more common in Siju City, especially for those who had made meritorious contributions. When they passed away, leaders would often come to offer their condolences. Most of the flower baskets on both sides of the wall were signed by the former or current leaders. This was the heritage of the big families in Siju City. When Qin Shing went in to pay his respects, of course, he was stopped at the back. At this time, all the members of the Lin family had already seen Qin Shing. When they saw Qin Shing, their expressions were very complicated. People of different status had different feelings. Of course, many people did not expect that Qin Shing would show up. After all, Lin Su did not come back in time. Moreover, Qin Shing and Lin Su were not married after all. At this time, some rumors were disproved. Of course, some people also understood that it was reasonable for Qin Shing to pay his respects to the old lady since Lin Su did not come back in time. Moreover, Qin Shing would be the son-in-law of the Lin family sooner or later. However, they did not know that there was such a complicated story behind it. Qin Shing walked forward slowly. His steps were more or less heavy. Anyway, the old lady was very kind to him. Looking at the old lady's portrait, the old lady's voice and smile appeared in Qin Shing's mind. The amiable old lady passed away like this. People would eventually return to dust in this life. However, the scenery along the way was the most important. The old lady had experienced what she should have experienced in this life. Now, the Lin family was prosperous, and she could also face the ancestors of the Lin family with a smile. Compared with other people who paid their respects to the old lady, they simply burned incense, bowed, and expressed their condolences to the direct descendants of the Lin family. Qin Shing was different. No matter what the outside world thought of him, he regarded himself as a member of the Lin family today. Therefore, after Qin Shing slowly burned incense, he knelt down heavily and kowtowed to the old lady 3 times. When he finished these 3 kowtows, Qin Shing's eyes were already red. He was still very sad because he felt sorry for old lady Lin. After Qin Shing stood up, he walked toward the immediate descendants of the Lin family unhurriedly. Almost all the people present were the immediate descendants of the Lin family. Lin Chongting and Lin Changhe, the 2 elders, stood in the front, while the others stood behind them. This was the most basic rule of the Lin family. After all, Lin Chongting and Lin Changhe were the biological sons of old Mrs. Lin and the oldest among the immediate descendants of the Lin family. Qin Shing looked at Lin Chongting, held his hand tightly, and said in a low voice, "Uncle Lin, I'm sorry for your loss." No matter what conflicts he had with Lin Chongting in the past, and no matter how Lin Chongting thought of him, these things could be left behind today, because today he came for old lady Lin. During this period, Lin Chongting had become much more indifferent. He replied in a low voice, "Thank you." No matter what he had done to Qin Shing, how Qin Shing had responded to him, and how his relationship with Lin Su was. He was very grateful that Qin Shing came today. Moreover, it was all thanks to Qin Shing and the Qin family that the Lin family could get through the crisis and rise again. Qin Shing and Lin Changhe just looked at each other. Needless to say, except for Lin Su, Lin Changhe was the one who had the most contact with the Lin family. They all knew what Qin Shing wanted to say. In the end, Qin Shing looked at all the members of the Lin family and nodded slightly, which could be regarded as a greeting. At this time, it seemed that Qin Shing should leave and have a rest. However, Qin Shing did not intend to leave. He walked directly to Lin Changhe and Lin Changting, and stood in the second row quietly. The meaning of this was self-evident, because today he was a member of the Lin family. All the members of the Lin family were shocked, but they seemed to understand. Only Lin Changhe knew why Qin Shing did this. The news that Qin Shing appeared in the Lin family, came to pay his respects to old Lady Lin, and finally stood among the members of the Lin family, spread like wildfire. Many tycoons of the Yangtze River Delta, who had planned to send a wreath, drove directly to the Lin family in Ningbo to pay their respects in person, because Qin Shing's attitude was very obvious. It was especially so for those big shots in Zhejiang who had dealings with Qin Shing, such as Boss Hu had risen to power, the Dugu family, who was in crisis, the old monk, who was experienced and farsighted. Of course, there was also Wu Yongchuan, who had personally sent his foster father to hell. Chapter 1076. What Qin Shing did was also his final compensation to the Lin family. After all, he owed Lin Su too much, and old Madame Lin too much. However, if the Zhu family found out about this, they would definitely reprimand Qin Shing. After all, Qin Shing was engaged to Song Ryu now. If he did that, the Song family would lose face. At that time, if the Song family asked about it, it would be hard for the Zhu family to explain. After all, Qin Shing had broken up with Lin Su. Why did he keep thinking about her? Was he trying to cheat on her? The Song family would never allow such a thing to happen. However, Qin Shing really did not think so much. At most, he would be reprimanded by the Zhu family or explained to the Song family in person. He thought that they would understand. After all, Qin Shing was not an ungrateful person. Qin Shing stood there for more than an hour. Those who came to pay their respects to the old lady of the Lin family were somewhat surprised when their family members expressed their gratitude. Who was this young man standing behind Lin Changhe and Lin Changting? He didn't seem to remember that there was such a person in the Lin family. After all, even Lin Zhe wasn't qualified to stand here. Later, the news spread faster and faster, and more people knew about it. Only then did they realize that this young man was the legendary son-in-law of the Lin family, and also the heir of the famous Qin family. After that, Lin Changting asked Qin Shing to take a rest. No one could stand standing here all the time. The direct descendants of the Lin family also took turns to rest. If any big shots really came, the Lin family would inform them in advance. It was already afternoon. Qin Shing did not even have time to have lunch. He had been sleeping on the plane. Lin Changhe took Qin Shing to his building and asked the kitchen to prepare some dishes. Qin Shing finally had a chance to fill his stomach. At this moment, there were only Qin Shing and Lin Changhe in the dining room. When Qin Shing was almost done with his meal, Lin Changhe said slowly, "I think it's hard to hide Lin Su's whereabouts from now on. This is a bit too big. Who knows where the news will be leaked? If Lin Su really wants to come back, I'm afraid no one can stop her." Qin Shing said quietly, "With Sister Qinyan there, I can be at ease. If she really can't persuade Lin Su, let me do it. If Lin Su wants to hate someone, she can hate me." Lin Su could not come back to bid farewell to her grandmother. Of course, she would be very sad and pained. Perhaps only Qin Shing could persuade her. Lin Changhe said helplessly, "What will happen to Lin Su in the future? Will she stay in the United States forever? That doesn't seem to be a solution." Qin Shing said thoughtfully, I can only do this for the time being. This is also the best protection for her. Let's talk about it after everything goes smoothly on my side. Lin Changhe continued, after the baby is born, Lin Su can bring the baby back. She doesn't need to stay in the United States anymore. You don't have to worry about the rest. I will figure out a way to arrange it properly. No one will suspect anything. What Lin Changhe said was almost the same as what Xue Qinyan had thought at the beginning. That was to make up a fact. For example, Lin Su had married someone in the United States, and the child was born by them. It was actually very easy to find such a person. As long as they paid the money, there was nothing that they couldn't do. Qin Shing was not surprised that Lin Changhe knew about Lin Su's pregnancy. After all, Xue Qinyan had told him on the phone. Lin Changhe had already thanked God that he didn't tell other members of the Lin family. In addition, Lin Changhe didn't reprimand him or discuss countermeasures with him. What else did Qin Shing want? Qin Shing said calmly, Uncle Lin, don't worry about these things. When things go well with the Qin family, I won't have any taboos. I will give Lin Su what I should give, and I will also give the children what I should give. He did not say that he would not be stingy with what he should give and what he should help the Lin family. Lin Changhe had no choice but to say, let's talk about it later. After talking about these things, Qin Shing went to rest. He hadn't had any rest since last night. Lin Changhe had a lot of things to do, so he had no time to take care of Qin Shing. Qin Shing was arranged to live in the house where Lin Su used to live. After all, Lin Su and Qin Shing had such a relationship. It was the most suitable room for Qin Shing to live in. Qin Shing had been to Lin Su's boudoir before, so he was very familiar with the room. As soon as he entered the room, he could smell the familiar smell, which was unique to Lin Su. It seemed that Lin Su was with him. Sometimes Qin Shing also felt that it was unfair for him to do this to Lin Su. If it were other women, they would have broken up. How could they give him such a chance? Lying on the bed, Qin Shing thought about Lin Su, who was far away in Los Angeles. He hadn't seen her for several months. He didn't know whether she had gained weight or lost weight. He fell asleep while thinking about her. Qin Shing didn't know how long he had slept. He was woken up by a phone call. He picked up the phone and found it was already 4:00 in the afternoon. He didn't know what was going on until he picked up the phone. It turned out that those big shots in Hangzhou had come. The first one to come was a dying old monk. He came with his 2 foster sons and his grandson, Chu Huanxi, to worship old Madame Lin. When the old monk showed up, many people were somewhat shocked. They didn't expect that the old monk, who hadn't shown up for a long time, would show up in person. After washing up, Qin Shing rushed to the morning hall. At this time, the old monk, his grandson, Chu Huanxi, and his 2 foster sons were worshipping old Madame Lin. After the worshipping, the family members returned the greeting. At this time, the old monk and his companions walked slowly to the people of the Lin family. Both Lin Changting and Lin Changhe were familiar with the old monk. They had seen each other many times over the years. However, they didn't have a deep relationship with each other. After all, they took different paths. The deeper the relationship, the more disadvantageous it would be for the Lin family. Consequently, the Lin family had always kept a distance from these people. Just like when Lin Songhao was in power in Ningbo, the Lin family still didn't want to have a close relationship with him. However, Lin Songhao shamelessly wanted the Lin family to support him. Besides, he was also showing off his power to the Lin family. After all, the Lin family was just a branch of the Lin family, while Lin Changting and Lin Changhe were the direct descendants of the Lin family. However, today the old monk came to worship old Madame Lin in person. The Lin family was very grateful to him. Of course, they had to greet the old monk politely. Of course, they also knew that the old monk didn't come for them, but for Qin Shing. If Lin Changhe and Lin Changting didn't even know this, they would have lived like dogs. Don't be sad. The old monk bowed slightly and sighed with emotion. Maybe he would end up like this soon. Originally, he only had a few months to live. The doctors tried all kinds of ways to prolong his life. If Qin Shing hadn't appeared in Ningbo, he wouldn't have come at all. Lin Chongting said politely, Senior Chu, sorry to trouble you. The old monk shook his head and sighed bitterly. Senior Chu, thank you. Let Qin Shing take you inside to have a rest. Lin Chonghe replied calmly, Senior Chu, thank you. Let Qin Shing take you inside to have a rest. At this time, the old monk walked to Qin Shing. He smiled and patted Qin Shing's shoulder. Qin Shing, long time no see. Let's talk inside? The old monk was a big figure, but he was not qualified to be respected by Qin Shing. In front of the old monk, Qin Shing was confident. He said in a deep voice, This way, please. Under the guidance of the servants of the Lin family, Qin Shing and the old monk came to the living room of the side building. They talked about something. The other members of the Lin family didn't join in, because it was not suitable for them to get involved in the affairs between Qin Shing and the old monk. It was not until this time that Chu Huanxi greeted Qin Shing politely. Master Qin. Qin Shing didn't want to talk to Chu Huanxi at all. He had a grudge with Qin Shing. If his grandfather hadn't dealt with this matter in person, he would have been killed by Qin Shing in the last disturbance. So Chu Huanxi was still afraid of Qin Shing. As for the two foster sons of the old monk, Qin Shing had only met them a few times. He had more contact with other people. However, he heard that the old monk had dealt with the two foster sons who had high positions. So now Chu Huanxi was completely in charge of the old monk's side. The two foster sons supported Chu Huanxi completely because they didn't have a strong foundation. Otherwise, the old monk wouldn't have supported them. Master Chu, you look very healthy, Qin Shing said deliberately. In order to save his grandson's life, the old monk had said that he only had a few months left. Of course, the old monk knew what Qin Shing meant. He smiled helplessly and said, Young Master Qin, don't tease me. I just came out of the hospital. Whether we can meet again next time depends on God. Master Chu, do you have any other purpose besides worshipping the old lady this time? Qin Shing asked directly. The old monk said thoughtfully, Actually, I have no other purpose. I just want to see young Master Qin. Secondly, I have a presumptuous request. I hope young Master Qin can promise me. What is it? Say it first. Qin Shing frowned and said. The old monk let out a long sigh and said, I'm going to die soon. If I die in the future, I hope young Master Qin can take care of my disappointing grandson for my sake. Of course, I won't let young Master Qin take care of me for nothing. Every year, the Chu family will give some benefits to young Master Qin. What do you think, young Master Qin? He was full of sincerity. Qin Shing didn't expect that there would be such a good thing when he came to Ningbo. However, he would not easily agree to this kind of thing. Who knew how many people the old monk had offended? When he died, people would hit him when he was down. So Qin Shing just said, I'll think about it. The old monk nodded and said, Then I'll wait for your news. At this time, Wei Li called and said that he had arrived at the Lin family. He had worshipped the old lady, but he didn't see Qin Shing. Qin Shing said that he was in the side building and asked the servants of the Lin family to bring him here. After hanging up the phone, the old monk stood up and said goodbye. He didn't ask Qin Shing who had come. He thought that it must be the group of people from Hangzhou. After all, they came in person for Qin Shing's sake. Not long after the old monk left, Wei Li came in. However, he was followed by the brother and sister of the Dugu family. Qin Shing was quite familiar with them and knew that Wei Li was close to them. He smiled and greeted them, then chatted with them. I didn't expect that you would come. Wei Li smiled and joked. Of course, Qin Shing knew what he meant. He replied, What should come will come. People can't be ungrateful. Aren't you afraid that the Song family will know? Wei Li continued. The brother and sister of the Dugu family were very respectful in front of Wei Li. After all, the Wei family was getting better and better. After all, the Dugu family was not as good as before. Qin Shing replied honestly, "If they know, then they know. I will explain to them honestly. The Song family is not so stingy." Wei Li said helplessly, "You are such a sentimental person." Wei Li and the brother and sister of the Dugu family left soon. However, they would stay in Ningbo for 2 days. After all, they had many friends here. It was rare for them to come here, so they couldn't go back like this. After that, Qin Shing received Boss Hu. He didn't talk much with Boss Hu, because there was nothing to talk about. However, Boss Hu valued Qin Shing's relationship very much. If he didn't come, Qin Shing might have a problem with him. After Boss Hu left, Wu Yongchuan and brother Luo arrived. When Wu Yongchuan saw Qin Shing, he scolded Boss Hu, saying that Qin Shing had stolen their business and so on. Qin Shing didn't care about Wu Yongchuan, because Wu Yongchuan was of no use to him anymore. However, Qin Shing talked more with brother Luo. After all, he was indebted to brother Luo. Although brother Luo cooperated with Wu Yongchuan, he also had a good development this time. Now, he could be said to be the most powerful among Third Master Wu's adopted sons. Of course, it was also because of Qin Shing's relationship. Both the old monk and boss who respected brother Luo. In the end, Qin Shing thought of his former friend. He let out a long sigh and said, "Brother Luo, is there any news about Yang Deng?" Hearing this familiar name, brother Luo knew what Qin Shing wanted to ask. He replied, "He disappeared. There is no news about him at all. I asked many people to inquire about him, but there is no news." Qin Shing said helplessly, "After all, I am sorry for him." Brother Luo patted Qin Shing's shoulder and said, "He will understand." After that, Qin Shing saw brother Luo off in person. After that, he didn't receive anyone else. It was said that some people would come from Shanghai tomorrow. Qin Shing might have to show up. In the evening, night fell. Qin Shing accompanied Lin Yu and chatted with several women of the Lin family. At this time, several strange men appeared in the back mountain of the Lin family. They had investigated all the terrain of the Lin family and were discussing countermeasures at the moment. These people were sent by Elder Long. They were Old Ghost and the others. The others looked at Lao Gui and asked, "Big brother, there are too many people. How can we deal with them?" Lao Gui squinted and stared at the Lin family, which was brightly lit. He smiled and said, "There will be a chance." Chapter 1077. Waiting to watch the play. After receiving Elder Long's order, Lao Gui and the others arrived in Ningbo from Shenzhen in the afternoon. What could Qin Shing do in Ningbo? It must be because of the Lin family. Elder Long could find out the news of old Lady Lin's death with a little inquiry. After all, this matter was not hidden from the public. Nowadays, most people in Ningbo already knew it. Lao Gui and the others found the Lin family's old house easily. After all, the Lin family was so influential in Ningbo. However, the security at the Lin family's old mansion was much tighter than before. After all, this was old Madame Lin's funeral. The Lin family was afraid that someone would come and cause trouble. Secondly, those who came to pay their respects to old Madame Lin were all sorts of important people. If something really happened at the Lin family's old mansion, no one would be able to bear the responsibility. Therefore, the Lin family had long been prepared. Before old Lady Lin passed away, they had already made a plan, especially in the aspect of security. They had hired several professional security companies, as well as the internal bodyguards of the Lin family, and so on. It would be difficult for anyone to make a move here. Moreover, there were many policemen arranged by the Ningbo police outside, and 2 cars were patrolling back and forth, in case of any accidents. Moreover, these big shots who came to pay their respects to old Lady Lin also brought bodyguards with them. Who knew if there would be some hidden masters? Therefore, Lao Gui and the others dared not take risks out of desperation. Even if they could sneak into the Lin family's old house at night, they might not be able to find Qin Shing. Even if they found Qin Shing, they would have to face the Qin family's bodyguards and the Lin family's people. Moreover, Qin Shing's strength was not simple. It was impossible for him to finish the battle in a short time. Once he couldn't finish the battle in a short time, he would inevitably alert the enemy. At that time, it would be difficult for them to escape, let alone kill Qin Shing. Therefore, what they could do was to wait for the perfect opportunity. Even if they couldn't find it this time, they would not easily take action. Otherwise, it would be extremely difficult for them to take action in the future. In the evening, after chatting with the women of the Qin family, Qin Shing went back to Lin Su's room to rest. When Song Ryu called him, Qin Shing did not tell her that he was in Ningbo. It was not that he could hide anything from her. He just did not want Song Ryu to think too much. After all, women's minds were hard to guess. If Song Ryu really knew about it, Qin Shing would explain it to her frankly. During this period of time, Song Ryu had taken the initiative to call Qin Shing almost every day. Of course, Qin Shing would take the initiative to call Song Ryu as well. After all, they had been engaged and their relationship was getting closer and closer. Although they had not broken through the last layer, they were almost there. Qin Shing did not dare to neglect Song Ryu. The next day, there were still many people who came to pay their respects to old Madame Lin. Qin Shing accompanied the members of the Lin family to meet many big shots. Of course, there were also people who came for Qin Shing. Qin Shing also received them politely. For example, many people from Hangzhou and Shanghai were Qin Shing's old acquaintances. The members of the Lin family were still very busy, but in an orderly manner. After all, such a century-old family had experienced all kinds of things and would not be thrown into confusion by sudden changes. However, everyone was a little tired, even Qin Shing felt a little tired. The old madam would be buried the next day. The Lin family did not want to delay too long. According to the tradition, the old madam would be buried together with the old master of the Lin family in the ancestral grave of the Lin family. The Lin family had been rooted in Ningbo for so many years, and it was not easy for them to get to where they were today. It was said that the feng shui of the Lin family's ancestral grave was very good. It was the location chosen by a famous feng shui master in Jiangsu and Zhejiang. It hid wind and gathered water. It was near the mountain and could look at the sea. It was no wonder that every time the Lin family encountered a crisis, it could turn into a blessing. In the afternoon, there were fewer guests who came to pay their respects to old Madame Lin. However, since the funeral of the old Madame Lin would be held tomorrow, many people would come to see her off. This time, many people who came to pay their respects to old Madame Lin stayed in Ningbo, waiting for the burial of the old Madame Lin. Lin Yu did not sleep well for the past 2 days. Not only did she help the members of the Lin family, but she also chatted with her sister, Lin Su. She was afraid that something unexpected would happen. If her sister found out at this time, it would be really troublesome. When Qin Shing was resting on the balcony of the auxiliary building, Lin Yu walked in with a cup of freshly squeezed watermelon juice in her hand and asked, "Brother-in-law, are you tired?" Qin Shing shook his head and said, "I'm fine. However, the dark circles under your eyes are a bit serious. After you finish your work tomorrow, you should take a good rest for a few days. Otherwise, you won't look pretty anymore." Lin Yu asked casually, "Got it, brother-in-law." "Brother-in-law, do you think my sister knows about it?" Qin Shing shook his head and said, "I don't think she knows about it. Based on your sister's character, if she knows about it, she will definitely call us. She has a deep relationship with Grandma. It is impossible for her to hide it from us. Besides, Sister Qinyan is by her side. How can she not feel it?" Lin Yu nodded and said, "I also hope my sister doesn't know about it. Otherwise, she will definitely be very sad." While Qin Sheng was chatting with Lin Yu, The news that he had come to the Lin family in Ningbo had already spread to Beijing. Su Xingwei was the first one who knew about it. Su Xingwei was eager for the Qin family to have internal strife. He spread the news with his big mouth, and even called Song Husheng directly. Song Husheng received Su Xingwei's call in his office. His intuition told him that it was definitely not a good thing. Although he was familiar with Su Xingwei, he did not have much contact with him in daily life. After all, they belonged to different circles. If it was possible, they would not have contact with each other. Even if they met, they just greeted each other politely. Song Husheng laughed and said, "Child Su, the sun rises from the west today." Su Xingwei did not make small talk. He said directly, "Well, I don't want to disturb you, Lao Song. But there is something I think I should tell you. After all, we are still friends. That's why I called you." Song Husheng slightly frowned and said, "What is it? Tell me." Su Xingwei said playfully, "Nothing. Just something about Qin Xing. After all, you are his brother-in-law. He should say what he should say. Otherwise, Sister Ruyu will be hurt in the end, won't she?" Hearing Qin Xing's name, Song Husheng instantly became somewhat unhappy. He snorted and said, "Su Xingwei, don't keep me guessing. What's the matter?" Su Xingwei said slowly, "Since Qin Xing and Ryu are engaged, I think we should let go of our previous feelings. Otherwise, how can we face Ryu? I don't know whether you know about this or not. If you do, just treat it as me talking too much. If you don't, I advise you to ask about it as soon as possible. I heard that Qin Xing went to Ningbo to look for Lin Su again. It seems that Lin Su's grandmother passed away, but they broke up. Moreover, Qin Xing is engaged." After hearing this news, Song Husheng restrained his anger and said, "Are you sure?" Back then, the reason why he had been obstructing the marriage between Qin Xing and Ru Yu was that he knew that Qin Xing had a lot of affairs outside, especially when Qin Xing had a girlfriend, Lin Su. However, Ru Yu had been bewitched. Although they were engaged now, Song Husheng still did not approve of this marriage. As long as they were not married, he would stop it. However, he did not expect that Qin Xing would go to look for Lin Su. He did not care why Qin Xing went there. As long as Qin Xing contacted Lin Su behind his sister's back, he would not allow it. Su Xingwei said lightly, "How can I lie to you about this? If you don't believe me, you can call him. Okay, I've said what I need to say. How to deal with it is up to you. Remember to owe me a meal. I have something else to do. Bye." After saying this, Su Xingwei hung up the phone and showed a complacent smile. He guessed that Song Husheng was going to make trouble for Qin Xing again. He could sit back and watch the show. He knew it was difficult to use Song Husheng as a weapon, but Song Husheng's weakness was his sister. He even suspected that Song Husheng had a sister complex. Otherwise, why did he care about Song Ryu so much? Anyway, it had nothing to do with him. Let's see how Song Husheng would fight with Qin Xing. However, Su Xingwei miscalculated. After hanging up the phone, Song Husheng did not directly contact Qin Xing. Since Su Xingwei could call him, it must be true. The first thing he wanted to know was whether Ryu knew about it or not. If Qin Xing went to Ningbo behind Ryu's back, he would definitely not spare Qin Xing. After walking out of the office, Song Husheng found an empty conference room and called Song Ryu. Lin Su, who was working outside, quickly answered the phone. Before Song Ryu said anything, Song Husheng said directly, "Do you know that Qin Xing went to Ningbo?" Chapter 1078. Song Husheng had always thought that Qin Xing was not worthy of Song Ryu at all. Even most of the young talents in Siju City were not worthy of her. It seemed that only an excellent man like him could be worthy of Ryu. Therefore, he did not care about the so-called rich playboys introduced by his family. He even strictly checked on his sister. Fortunately, his sister did not like those rich playboys at all. However, he did not expect that his sister would choose Qin Xing in the end. Qin Shing was far inferior to those rich playboys and young talents. If he had known this, he would have chosen them. More importantly, Qin Shing had always been a womanizer. He knew quite a few women who had ambiguous relationships with him. However, this did not stop his sister from choosing Qin Shing. Song Hushing could not figure out what was going on. It was not until the day of the engagement that he understood. Although Song Hushing still wanted to stop this marriage, the resentment in his heart had lessened a lot. Perhaps as time passed and their relationship became closer, he slowly let it go. However, he did not expect that Qin Shing would still be entangled with his former woman after being engaged to Ryu. How could Song Hushing tolerate it? Song Ryu had not seen Qin Shing for a long time. Although they would call or video call every day, women in love could only quench their thirst at the sight of the plum blossoms. If it were not for the fact that she was going to be transferred here soon and had some handover procedures, she might have taken time to visit Qin Shing in Shenzhen during this period. Today, the organization just talked to her. She would leave here soon. She had been here since graduation. She was reluctant to leave so suddenly. When she came back from the middle office, she received a call from Song Hushing. Song Hushing had not called her for a long time, although their relationship had eased a lot. As long as Song Hushing did not continue to entangle with Qin Shing, their relationship would still be the same as before. After all, this brother cared about her more than anyone else. However, she did not expect that after answering the phone, Song Hushing directly said, "Did you know that Qin Shing went to Ningbo?" It was Qin Shing again. Song Ryu instantly lost her temper. But when did Qin Shing go to Ningbo? Why did she not know? Qin Shing did not tell her. It seemed that Qin Shing was still in Shenzhen yesterday. Why did he suddenly go to Ningbo? Why did Qin Shing suddenly go to Ningbo when the Qin family was in a terrible fix in Shenzhen? Based on her understanding of Qin Shing, it was obvious that he did not go to find Lin Su. Moreover, she had long known that Lin Su had gone to the United States last year and had not come back until now. It was impossible for her to come back so suddenly. The only explanation was that something must have happened to the Lin family. Song Ryu replied slowly, "I know." Upon hearing Qin Shing's words, Song Hushing was stupefied for a moment. He was somewhat surprised. But then he figured it out. It seemed that Qin Shing had told his sister about this matter on his own initiative. Otherwise, he would not have dared to go to Ningbo. If his sister knew about this, their relationship would definitely fall apart. He must have gone to Ningbo with his sister's approval. Moreover, it was also because of old Lady Lin's death. Based on his understanding of his sister, she would not be so stingy and would definitely let Qin Shing go there. At this time, Song Hushing somewhat regretted making this call. It would only make his sister think that he was meddling in other people's business. He also secretly cursed Su Xingwei, who was watching the fun and did not care about the consequences. Su Xingwei was really wicked. He actually used him as a tool. He would never forget this matter. Song Hushing was a little worried and asked again, "Did Qin Shing tell you about it?" Song Ryu said calmly, "Yes, he did." "Okay, I got it. I'm hanging up." Song Hushing dared not to continue the conversation, for fear that his sister would get angry again. After all, he had been paying attention to this matter, and their relationship also fell apart because of this. Before Song Ryu continued to say something, Song Hushing had already hung up the phone. After putting away the phone, Song Ryu was lost in thought. What on earth happened to the Lin family in Ningbo? Otherwise, why would Qin Shing go there in such a hurry? After hesitating for a while, she wanted to call and ask which friend of hers was in Ningbo and could get in touch with the Lin family. After a while, she thought of a female classmate who was from a famous private enterprise in Ningbo. Although it was not the kind of enterprise that everyone knew, it was still a well-known one in the local area. After making sure, she directly dialed the number. When the phone was connected, she first politely exchanged some greetings. After that, she directly asked about the Lin family. That friend was somewhat curious about why Song Ryu suddenly asked about the Lin family. Did it have something to do with the Lin family? Why hadn't Song Ryu mentioned it before? However, she was just curious and didn't ask directly. She just answered truthfully, saying that the old lady of the Lin family had passed away and her father had gone to mourn for her yesterday. Hearing this news, Song Ryu was somewhat shocked. The old lady of the Lin family had passed away? At this time, Song Ryu figured out what on earth was going on. No wonder Qin Shing suddenly went to Ningbo. She more or less knew the story between Qin Shing and Lin Su. The old lady of the Lin family had been kind to Qin Shing. Although he had separated from Lin Su, the old lady of the Lin family had passed away. No matter what, Qin Shing should go to see her off. Moreover, she also knew Qin Shing's character. As long as he knew this news, he would definitely go to Ningbo. However, Song Ryu was somewhat angry. Even if Qin Shing wanted to go to Ningbo, he should have told her in advance. Was he afraid that she would not allow him to go to Ningbo? Was Song Ryu such an unreasonable person? However, Song Ryu didn't want to be angry with Qin Shing now. She would definitely get even with Qin Shing later. He had to give her a reasonable explanation, or she would not let it go so easily. In love, all women were like this, and Song Ryu was not exaggerating. In the Lin family, Ningbo, old lady Lin's funeral was still going on, but today, fewer guests came to pay their condolences. The Lin family could finally have a little rest. This kind of family affairs had always been quite tiring. Even ordinary families would be so busy, not to mention a big family like the Lin family. However, the Lin family was a big family, and there were so many people in the family that not a few elders would attend to everything personally. Night fell again. It was inexplicably windy outside. The weather forecast said that it would rain tonight, which gave the Lin family a headache. If it really rained, it would be a little troublesome for the old lady's funeral tomorrow. Now, they could only pray that it would not rain. The old lady had done good deeds all her life, and this last journey of her life should be smooth. However, the Lin family dared not put all their hopes on God. The open space in front of the main house had been set up with tents, and even a road with tents had been set up on the main road. In this way, even if it rained tomorrow, they would not be afraid of the funeral. Although it was a little troublesome, they did not need to worry about it in advance. Besides, they only needed to spend money, and the Lin family did not need to do anything in person. As for the cemetery, it was the same, just in case it rained tomorrow. At night, Qin Shing almost did not sleep. He was also worried about the rain. On the one hand, it was a little inauspicious, and on the other hand, it was really troublesome. It was estimated that the Lin family was not sleepy, and many people were waiting. If it really rained in the middle of the night, the Lin family would be busy again. At that time, Qin Shing could get up and help. At about 10 o'clock in the evening, Xue Qinyan sent a video call to Qin Shing. It seemed that she was not with Lin Su, or she would not dare to send a video call to Qin Shing. Qin Shing asked directly, "Sister, how is it? Lin Su did not find any clues, did she?" "Not yet, but she asked Lin Yu to video chat with the old lady. Lin Yu said that she had gone to Shanghai and could only video chat when she came back. Then she asked Lin Yu's mother. Lin Yu's mother said that the doctor did not allow the old lady to be disturbed, and she had to rest for a few days. These made her a little confused, but not suspicious," Xue Qinyan replied truthfully. Qin Shing said helplessly, "Anyway, let's wait until tomorrow. When the old lady is buried, even if she knows it, she will not rush back." Xue Qinyan shook her head and said, "That's the only way." Qin Shing continued, "When the old lady's funeral is over tomorrow, I will go to see Lin Su's mother. I have something to say to Auntie. After all, I am sorry for Lin Su. I don't know when I will come to Ningbo next time. I should go to see Auntie." Upon hearing Qin Shing's words, Xue Qinyan was very pleased and said, You should go to see her. Yesterday, Lin Su muttered that she dreamed of her mother. She must miss her. Unfortunately, she can't go back. You go to see her on behalf of Lin Su. She will be very happy if she knows it. Qin Xing could not help but let out a long sigh. He hoped that he would not let Lin Su down in the future. After the conversation, Qin Xing hung up the video call and said that he would contact her if there was anything. He, who was not sleepy, finally fell asleep unconsciously. It was not until 6 o'clock the next morning that he was disturbed by the noise outside. Qin Xing suddenly woke up, afraid that he had fallen asleep. After all, today was the day of the old lady's funeral. He picked up his phone and looked at the time. Then he was relieved. However, he thought of the rain yesterday. He quickly got up, opened the window and looked out. Although the sky outside was covered with dark clouds, it was not raining. He could not help but feel lucky. When Qin Xing finished washing up and came out, the Lin family was already busy. There were many guests outside. Even the main road of the Lin family was full of all kinds of cars. These people came to see the old lady off for the last time. The old lady, who had worked hard all her life, should finish her last journey in glory. Qin Xing, who was in mourning, followed the Lin family and was busy. Although the funeral procedure was a little complicated, it was all the rules in Ningbo. Big families like the Lin family paid the most attention to these rules, because they were afraid that it would be inauspicious and affect their descendants. At 7 o'clock sharp, several elders of the Lin family slowly walked out of the mourning hall, holding the old lady's coffin. Qin Xing was among them. Outside, the direct and collateral relatives of the Lin family had already knelt on both sides and cried. This kind of atmosphere was extremely sad. People eat dirt for a lifetime, but dirt only eats people once. Who didn't live like this in this life? The old lady was on her way. Chapter 1079. Killing Intent in the Heavy Rain, Part 2. The Lin family hadn't seen such a scene for a long time. The last time was when Lin Zhe got married. At that time, the Lin family was in the limelight. The marriage made the Lin family famous. Almost everyone in Ningbo knew about it. The last time was when old Master Lin passed away. The scene at that time was not much worse than when old Madam passed away today. It was just that the Lin family was now on a higher level than before, and there were also the factors of the Qin family and Qin Xing. Therefore, many big shots in the Yangtze River Delta, who did not have much contact with the Lin family, usually came to mourn. It could be said that they had given the Lin family enough face, so many people could not understand the Lin family. The Lin family thought the next time was when Lin Su got married. After all, the Qin family and Qin Xing's background were here. At that time, it would definitely be an unprecedented event in Ningbo. However, they didn't expect that old Madam Lin would walk in front of them, which made the Lin family sigh with emotion. The old Madam Lin would feel sorry that she couldn't see her favorite granddaughter get married. The crowd walked out with the coffin in their hand. It was not until the coffin was placed on the hearse that the members of the Lin family got up and got on the hearse. Qin Xing followed Lin Chongting and Lin Changhe into the hearse and stayed by old Madam Lin's side. Raising the coffin, the motorcade moved slowly. There were endless cars coming to see them off. There were traffic policemen on duty at every intersection. Fortunately, the Lin family's old house was in the suburbs. If it was in the downtown area, it might cause a great shock. However, the Lin family had a plan, which was limited to Ningbo, so there wouldn't be any media reports. Later, except for the Lin family's motorcade, the other guests took a detour and went to the ancestral grave of the Lin family in advance. Anyway, it was a distance away, so they wouldn't be seen by too many people. Qin Xing, who was sitting in the car, had not felt such a sorrowful atmosphere for a long time. The last time he felt this way was when his grandfather passed away. However, compared with the scene of old Madam Lin's funeral, old Master Qin's funeral seemed very shabby. He left this world quietly. Except for Qin Shing, his biological grandson, no other immediate family members knew about it. Maybe not many people had the same ending as old Master Qin. He was born ordinary, lived a wonderful life, and died a peaceful death. That was the life of old Master Qin. Qin Shing, let bygones be bygones. I don't expect you to do anything to me or the Lin family. I don't know how you and Susu are doing now. I just hope that you won't let her down. I've let her down in this life. I owe her and her mother, and I won't have a chance to pay them back in this life. They mostly chatted with Lin Chongting and Lin Chongha, talking about the past of old Madame Lin. After nearly an hour's journey, the Lin family's motorcade finally arrived at the destination of this trip, the ancestral grave of the Lin family. The ancestral grave of the Lin family was against the mountain and facing the sea. There was also a small river in front of it, which hid wind and gathered water. It was a good place with good feng shui. No wonder the Lin family could be so prosperous. Halfway up the mountain, Old Ghost and several of his brothers were staring at this place. Seeing that old Madame Lin's funeral was about to end, if they still couldn't find a chance, they could only return without accomplishing anything. At that time, it would be hard for them to explain to Elder Long. One of Old Ghost's men frowned and said, "Uncle Ghost, there is still no chance." Old Ghost gritted his teeth and said, "Keep waiting." Another man said in a low voice, "Today is the last day. What if we still can't find a chance?" Old Ghost said calmly, "Then let's go to Shenzhen again." Hearing Old Ghost's words, the others didn't say anything more. At this moment, the ancestral grave of the Lin family was already full of cars, and there were more than 100 people outside. They were all here to see old Madame Lin off. The Lin family had already arranged a lot of people to guard the surroundings. After getting out of the car, the people of the Lin family carried the old lady's coffin to the grave where old Madame Lin and old Master Lin were buried together. The grave had been dug up and was waiting to be buried. The direct and collateral relatives of the Lin family cried again, and the air was full of sadness. When the old lady's coffin arrived at the grave, it had already been taken over by the people here. The person in charge of the funeral began to bury the old lady according to the customs. The whole process was carried out in an orderly manner. Qin Shing was already standing next to Lin Yu, holding her shoulder and comforting this little girl. In fact, what Qin Shing was most afraid of was that old Madame Lin's funeral would be too noisy. It was very likely that Lin Su would get the news from other friends, and then there would be trouble. However, this was also a matter of time. Qin Shing had no choice but to hide it as long as he could. Before long, the old lady was buried. Next, it was time for the guests to pay their respects. These guests who came to see old Madame Lin off were all dressed in solemn black clothes, holding chrysanthemums in their hands. These chrysanthemums were also prepared in advance by the Lin family. The direct and collateral relatives of the Lin family all stood on both sides. After these guests finished paying their respects, it was the family members' turn to pay their respects. At that time there would be other procedures. The guests lined up to pay their respects. After paying their respects, they directly got into the car and left the ancestral grave of the Lin family. Their task this time was completely over. Qin Shing also saw several old acquaintances, such as Wei Li, the Dugu siblings, the old monk's grandson, Chu Huanxi, who had already returned to Hangzhou, Boss Hu's son, brother Luo, Wu Yongchuan, and so on. After paying their respects to old Madame Lin, these old acquaintances who knew Qin Shing said goodbye to him, one after another, and then drove away. The weather was getting worse and worse. The Lin family was a little worried that it would rain, so they paid their respects faster. Soon, the guests finished paying their respects. After that, only the direct descendants of the Lin family were left. Qin Shing paid his respects alone. He burned 3 sticks of incense for old Madame Lin and poured 3 glasses of wine for her. After that, he put the bunch of yellow chrysanthemums on the grave and said in a low voice, "Grandma, I'm sorry. It's all my fault. Sue didn't come to see you off. I hope you don't blame her. Thank you. It's all my fault. Grandma, don't worry. I won't let you down. I won't let her down in this life. I'll make her happy later. You can go in peace." After saying that, Qin Shing kowtowed 3 times and stood up. However, Qin Shing was not in a hurry to leave. He kept watching the other members of the Lin family paying their respects. When Lin Yu came back, she had already passed out from crying. No matter how hard Qin Shing tried, he could not pull her up. He could only directly hold her in his arms and walk to the side. He tried his best to calm her down. Half an hour later, the funeral finally came to an end. At this time, the cloudy sky finally began to rain. At the beginning, it was only a light drizzle, but then it became a downpour. All the members of the Lin family could not help sighing with emotion. This was the result of the old lady's good deeds throughout her life. God waited until the funeral was over before it started to rain. Otherwise, the funeral would have been torturous. The rest of the members of the Lin family echoed one after another. The rain was getting heavier and heavier. The rest of the members of the Lin family directly got in their cars and prepared to go home. Qin Shing had planned to visit Lin Su's mother after the funeral, because he would go back to Shenzhen in the afternoon. In the future, he would have little time to come to Ningbo. Moreover, Xue Qinyan had said that Lin Su missed her mother. Therefore, although it was raining heavily, Qin Shing still went to visit Lin Su's mother according to his original plan. Moreover, it would not take up too much time. At this time, Lin Yu said, "Brother-in-law, let me go with you." Qin Shing touched Lin Yu's hair and said gently, "No need. You'd better go back and have a good rest. Second uncle has already arranged for someone to take me there. You don't need to worry about me. Don't get wet in the rain and catch a cold." Lin Yu had been a little tired these days. After some persuasion, Lin Yu did not insist on going. At this time, Lin Changhe said, "The rain is a little heavy. Be careful and come back early." Qin Shing came to the Lin family with bodyguards, so Lin Changhe did not need to worry about anything. Qin Shing nodded and said, "Okay, I know." After saying this, Qin Shing parted ways with the members of the Lin family. He got into an off-road vehicle prepared by the Lin family and followed the man arranged by Lin Changhe to go to Lin Su's mother's grave with 2 bodyguards. The route happened to be the opposite of the route that the members of the Lin family took. This scene was seen by Old Ghost, who was hiding not far away. When he saw Qin Shing going in the opposite direction, Old Ghost finally showed a bloodthirsty smile and said, "Here comes our chance." Chapter 1080. Was he going to die here? Qin Shing didn't know that danger was coming, and he had planned for it for a long time. Most importantly, there was no one around Qin Shing this time, especially Chang Baji, who was not by his side. It seemed that Qin Shing was in danger this time. This area was full of mountains. Although the ancestral grave of the Lin family was not far from the cemetery where Lin Su's mother was buried, the driver didn't drive fast because of the heavy rain. Safety was the priority. People always felt sad when it rained. The 2 relatives who loved Lin Su the most had passed away. Needless to say, Lin Su's mother had passed away when Lin Su was very young. She had something to do with Lin Chongding, so Lin Su didn't have a good impression of her father all these years. Later on, Lin Su only got close to her grandmother. In fact, Lin Su's life was similar to Qin Shing's. Qin Shing's mother also passed away when he was young. Later on, he lived with his grandfather and only got close to him. The only difference was that Lin Su had been living in the Lin family, while Qin Shing had left the Qin family. Of course, God also compensated Qin Shing by giving him another Lin family, namely Uncle Lin and Wang Li, which could be considered as making up for the lack of kinship. Of course, there was also a difference. If Qin Shing stayed in the Qin family, he would definitely be doted on. Not to mention his grandparents, who had loved him since he was young. Qin Chang'an wouldn't treat him badly even if he stayed in the Qin family. Moreover, there was his sister who had waited for him for 20 years. In the words of young people nowadays, they were like the devil who supported his younger brother. In the Lin family, only Lin Su's grandmother doted on her. Therefore, when old Madame Lin passed away, they tried their best to hide it, which was obviously unfair to Lin Su. Qin Xing remembered that he had never been so sad when his grandfather passed away. It was as if a piece of flesh had been dug out from his body. However, Qin Xing insisted on not crying. He stayed by his grandfather's coffin for 3 days and 3 nights until the day of his grandfather's burial. After everyone had left, he was like a child who had not grown up, wailing his heart out. His grandfather's death made Qin Xing feel like a loner. That was when he started traveling for more than 2 years. Today, after seeing old Madame Lin off, Qin Xing unconsciously thought of the things he had with his grandfather. How time flew. Many years had passed in the blink of an eye. He didn't know if his grandfather would be happy to return to the Qin family. Perhaps, when his grandfather took him away from the Qin family, he just wanted him to live an ordinary life. Who knew that he was born to be adventurous, and after many twists and turns, he finally returned to the Qin family. Now, he was involved in the Qin family's turmoil. That year, his grandfather had taken him away from the Qin Xing, and finally, he came back to the Qin family. Now, old Madame Lin Xing. Half an hour later, they arrived at the entrance of the cemetery with good scenery. It was raining heavily today. Except for the staff of the cemetery, there were not many people who came to pay their respects. The rain was really heavy. Editor. Translated Li Shi Editor. Translated Qin Lin Editor. The Liat didn't take him long to find it. The location of the cemetery was relatively good. Although Lin Su's mother couldn't be buried in the Lin family's ancestral grave, the Lin family wouldn't be so stingy. Moreover, old Madame Lin was there, but she couldn't change some family rules. After arriving at the cemetery, Qin Xing held the umbrella and squatted down slowly. The others stood a few meters away. He looked at Lin Su's mother's tombstone. From the photo on it, one could tell how beautiful Lin Su's mother was back then. Qin Xing had seen her mother's photo in Lin Su's photo album before. She was really beautiful. Otherwise, how could Lin Chongting be obsessed with her? Otherwise, how could she give birth to such a beauty? It was a pity that beauty had a short life. Lin Su's mother's name was Lu Jianxi. It was a very poetic name, taken from the Book of Songs. Simple and simple, only then will there be a myriad of dances. The sun was in the center, in the front. This was the name given by Lin Su's grandfather. Her grandfather used to be a teacher. His ancestors were scholars. But he died very early, leaving her grandmother and her mother to depend on each other. The second year after Lin Su's mother passed away, Lin Su's grandmother also passed away. This was because the death of Lin Su's mother was a huge blow to the old lady. After all, no one could bear the loss of a husband and daughter. Moreover, the Lin family took Lin Su away. The old lady spent her days in tears, and in the end, she died of exhaustion. Therefore, Lin Su really had no feelings for the Lin family, which was still the case. She only treated old Madame Lin and Lin Yu better. She didn't even care about Lin Changhe in the early years. Maybe because of this, old Madame Lin loved this poor granddaughter so much. Otherwise, Lin Su might be more antisocial today. Qin Xing slowly put the flowers in front of the tombstone, and then put several tributes in place. Then he lit the paper money and covered it with an umbrella to prevent it from being wet by the rain. He said to himself, "Auntie, I came to see you on behalf of Lin Su. I feel a little guilty facing you. I don't know what identity I should use to see you. If it weren't for me, Lin Su would definitely come to see you often. So please don't blame Lin Su. If you want to blame someone, blame me." The old lady passed away. Lin Su is still in the United States. We didn't tell Lin Su that the old lady passed away. It was a little cruel to Lin Su. I think you must be very angry. I hope you can forgive me. I'm sorry to you, the old lady, and Lin Su. Although I did it for Lin Su, maybe it was also for the child, so I was a little selfish. I also know that I don't have the face to see you. After all, I owe Lin Su too much. She had a hard life in the first half of her life. I thought that I could make up for what she had lost in these years after meeting me. I didn't expect that I was the one who brought her the most pain. So I'm really guilty and don't have the face to see you. Auntie, don't worry. I'm not trying to avoid anything. I'll face what I have to face. Like I said to the old lady, I can't do many things, but these are not reasons. I'll pay back what I owe Lin Su in this life. If I can't pay it back in this life, I'll do it in the next life. Just look at me in heaven. I'll also use the rest of my life to protect Lin Su and the child. I won't let them suffer any grievances, let alone let anyone bully them. This is the responsibility and obligation that I have to bear as a man. Auntie, Lin Su may not be able to come back to see you in a short time. After the child is born, I believe she will bring the child to see you. At that time, you will definitely be very happy. As for other things, I hope you won't blame Lin Su. Auntie, I may not have the chance to see you in a short time. But if I come to Ningbo again, I'll definitely come to see you. Auntie, thank you. Without you, I wouldn't have met Lin Su. Although you might not have wanted Lin Su to meet me, fate is not something that anyone can control. If fate could be controlled, I hope that after I met Lin Su, the things that happened later would not have happened. Then, these things would not have happened today. Auntie, I won't say any more. I won't disturb you anymore. I'm leaving now. I'll come to see you next time. After saying these words, Qin Sheng stood up. He came to see Lin Su's mother this time, not only to see her mother on behalf of Lin Su, but also to apologize. After all, it was he who changed Lin Su's fate and made her suffer so much. If Lin Su's mother knew about it, how could she not feel sad? However, he had no choice now. He could only pay back what he owed Lin Su in the future. After leaving the cemetery, Qin Sheng was ready to get in the car and go back to the Lin family. After a short rest and saying goodbye to the Lin family, he would directly go to the airport and go back to Shenzhen. The situation in Shenzhen had reached a white-hot point. Although He Yong was a little arrogant with the support of Uncle Long Laolu, as long as the Qin family stabilized the external pressure and slowly checked the accounts from the inside, it was only a matter of time to bring He Yong down. After all, in the face of some ironclad evidence, He Yong could not escape the punishment of the law. As for the things that He Yong knew, the Qin family did not have to worry about them. After all, Qin Chang'an was already involved in it. Compared with the things that Qin Chang'an was really involved in, what He Yong knew was just a trifle, which did not have any weight at all. However, no matter what, Qin Sheng still had to solve the problem in Shenzhen as soon as possible so that he could go back to Beijing as soon as possible. The man sent by the Lin family drove. One of Qin Sheng's two bodyguards sat in the front passenger seat, and the other sat beside Qin Sheng. They did not think that there would be any accidents on this trip. After all, this was not Shenzhen, so they were somewhat relaxed. Qin Sheng was more or less tired. In addition, it was the most annoying rainy day, so he was ready to close his eyes and rest for a while. After leaving the cemetery, they would pass by a fork in the road. When their SUV passed by, the road was blocked by a roadblock. However, Qin Sheng and his bodyguards did not know that. In this way, they continued to drive forward. 2 minutes later, the man from the Lin family who was driving suddenly slowed down, and the bodyguard of the Qin family in the front passenger seat instantly became vigilant. Qin Sheng opened his eyes subconsciously and asked, "What's going on?" The bodyguard of the Qin family immediately replied, "Young master, something is wrong. A car is blocking our way." At this time, the two bodyguards were already on guard, as if they were facing a formidable enemy. There was definitely something wrong with this kind of thing happening in the wilderness. There must be something wrong when something abnormal happened. Qin Shing also came to his senses and realized that there was danger. Although he did not know who the other party was, it could be those old enemies in Zhujiang, Heyang's people who came from far away, and it was more likely that they were Uncle Long Lao's people. However, Qin Shing knew that this was definitely not the place to make a move. This time, he had no one to rely on except him and the two bodyguards of the Qin family. Since the other party could appear here, it was obvious that they had come prepared. Therefore, there was only one way, which was to leave. Qin Shing made a prompt decision and said, "Go back." However, it was too late. This was because another car appeared behind them, directly cutting off their path of retreat. The two cars were only 5 meters away from Qin Shing's SUV. On the left side of Qin Shing's SUV was a mountain with dense trees, which could not be driven in at all. On the right side it was almost like a cliff. If they drove down, it would be no different from suicide. Therefore, Qin Shing had no way back. At this time, 4 men of unknown ages got out of the two cars, because they were all wearing raincoats and lowered their heads. However, anyone could see that they were holding very long homemade knives in their hand. They attacked from the front and back and slowly walked toward Qin Shing's car. The man from the Lin family was so scared that his face turned blue, and the two bodyguards of the Qin family were also extremely nervous. Because it was very likely that they would die here today. What should Qin Shing do? Was he really going to die here today? Chapter 1081. A Man Boastful? The rain was getting heavier and heavier. The rain blurred his vision, and the surrounding environment became more and more unclear. The man sent by the Lin family was trembling with fear, but he was clear that these people were definitely not coming for him, but for the son-in-law of the Lin family. Only the son-in-law of the Lin family could be so valuable. But he didn't know who these people were. It was said that the son-in-law of the Lin family had a very powerful background. Who dared to kill him? Wouldn't it be like poking a hole in the sky? Looking at the 4 people coming from the front and the back, Qin Shing narrowed his eyes and was lost in thought. He also wondered who sent these people. But it was not important now. What mattered was how to get out of here. The timing of these people was too coincidental. Obviously, they had planned it carefully. It was estimated that since he entered Ningbo, all his whereabouts had been under their surveillance. Otherwise, why did they choose this time to take action? Should he drive over? Obviously, it was impossible in such a heavy rain. Moreover, he would be attacked from the front and the back. At that time, he would have no chance to escape. Therefore, there was only one way left. That was to fight to the death. Moreover, he also wanted to know the background of these people. After Qin Shing came to himself, he said bluntly, "Get out of the car and fight the enemies." The two bodyguards of the Qin family were a little worried. "Young master, isn't it a little risky?" "Young master, you stay in the car. We will go down to solve the problem," another bodyguard of the Qin family said in a deep voice. Since they were chosen by Chang Baji to protect Qin Shing in Ningbo, they were obviously the top bodyguards of the Qin family. Naturally, they had the confidence to say such words. Even a lion would use all its strength to fight a rabbit, otherwise it would be besieged and attacked. Qin Shing didn't want to make such a mistake. After all, he was not a useless playboy who could not even truss a chicken. His current strength was almost on par with Chang Baji's. Lao Chang's improvement was obvious to all, because he knew that only when one's own strength was powerful could they resolve any danger at critical times. Therefore, facing the current crisis, Qin Shing naturally had to solve it by himself. Otherwise, if something happened to the two bodyguards, he would be in a more difficult situation. As for the man sent by the Lin family, Qin Shing had no time to care about him at the moment, let alone pin his hopes on him. Qin Shing said directly, "You just stay in the car and call the Lin family for help. If anything happens to us, you can find a way to escape. We definitely can't protect you." "I got it, young master. I'll make the call right away," the man from the Lin family said in a trembling voice. After saying this, Qin Shing got out of the car directly with the 2 bodyguards of the Qin family. Qin Shing and his bodyguards did not open an umbrella. Naturally, they could not care about this at this time. 3 versus 4, if their strengths were well matched, there should be no problem. Moreover, Qin Shing's power was already close to Changbaji's. There were 2 people in front and behind them. At this time, they were only 2 meters away from Qin Shing and the others. Qin Shing could almost see their faces, but they were wearing raincoats and had their heads lowered. "Who are you?" Qin Shing's clothes were soaked in the rain in an instant. He casually wiped his face and asked with a frown. At this time, the man in the raincoat in front slowly raised his head. At the same time, he took off his raincoat and said, "Young Master Qin, how have you been?" When he saw the man's appearance, Qin Shing instantly felt like a basin of cold water was poured on him. Because he had already remembered who this man was. After all, Qin Shing's memory was superb. This middle-aged man was the man who intercepted him and Changbaji alone at the entrance of the Yang family. At that time, this man even fought with Changbaji for a few moves. In the end, no one knew why he left directly. Maybe he just wanted to warn them. However, Changbaji's final evaluation was that this man's strength was definitely not his. So when he saw this man, Qin Shing's mood was very complicated. He did not expect to meet such a tough guy. It seemed that today would be a fierce battle. "It's you," Qin Shing replied coldly. This man was naturally Old Ghost. Old Ghost chuckled and said, "I didn't expect young Master Qin to still remember me. I'm so honored. Then I'll try my best to leave your corpse intact today." "You're talking big," Qin Shing retorted. Even if he lost the final result, he would not lose his momentum. When Old Ghost heard this, he laughed out loud and said, "Young Master Qin, without Changbaji, I really don't know how you could turn the situation around. Otherwise, we would not have followed you for so long. From Shenzhen to Ningbo, we waited in Ningbo for a few days. It was not easy to wait for such a rare opportunity. Do you think we would miss it?" When he recognized Old Ghost, Qin Shing knew that this time Elder Long wanted to kill him. It seemed that only Elder Long had the courage to do so. These enemies in the Yangtze River Delta were already in the past. These days, Qin Shing did not find any flaws. From Shenzhen to Ningbo, Elder Long was really patient. Could it be that the changes in Beijing were so big that Elder Long was involved, so Elder Long made such a big move? In this case, did Sixth Uncle and the others know about this behind the scenes? Elder Long really wants to kill me? If he kills me, isn't he afraid of the revenge of the Qin family and the Zhu family? Qin Shing squinted and said. Now he had already felt the crisis. If it was premeditated for a long time, then the strength of this group of people was definitely not simple. After all, they were sent by Elder Long. Only this old guy, who was over 50 years old, was already very threatening. If the strength of the others was not simple, then he might really die here today. Therefore, Qin Shing was thinking of a way to get out of this situation. Old Ghost revealed a bloodthirsty smile and stared at Qin Shing as he said, "It has nothing to do with me. I'm just following orders. Killing you is my task." Qin Shing sneered and said, "Are you sure you can kill me? Aren't you afraid that I have a backup plan?" Young Master Qin, at this time, is it interesting to play such a child's game? We have been following you for so long, how can we not know what is going on around you? Don't delay any more time, don't wait for your reinforcements, let me send you to hell as soon as possible. Old Ghost said firmly. He did not want to waste his breath anymore. The sooner it ended, the sooner he could go back and report. Qin Shing looked at the environment in front of him, and did not know when they had been surrounded. Old Ghost said straightforwardly, "Do it." Qin Shing had no time to explain other things. He could only say, "Leave him to me, you deal with the others." By the time Qin Shing finished his words, Old Ghost had already rushed to Qin Shing. The self-made long saber in his hand directly slashed at Qin Shing, while the others had already gone to deal with the two bodyguards of the Qin family. A big battle directly began. Old Ghost did not want to play any game of cat and mouse. His task this time was very simple, that was to kill Qin Shing. If he let Qin Shing escape, then he could only directly commit suicide to apologize to Elder Long. In the heavy rain, Old Ghost's footsteps were very fast, as if at this moment even the raindrops had stopped. The long knife in his hand went straight to Qin Shing's face. When they were about to fight, the long knife suddenly slashed across. Qin Shing did not advance but retreated. He did not have a chance to retreat, so he braced himself, because he knew that if he was a little careless, he would die here today. When the long saber slashed horizontally toward his chest, Qin Shing took the opportunity to bend over and dodge it. He watched the long saber pass through his chest, and at this time, he also punched Old Ghost's abdomen in a timely manner. Old Ghost did not care. When Qin Shing dodged the long knife, he had already put it back. He took advantage of the situation and twisted his wrist. The long knife had already flown out of his hand to the other side, but the trajectory of the long knife was the back of Qin Shing's head. This move could be said to be fierce. When the long knife left his hand, Old Ghost jumped high at the same time and used his knee to block Qin Shing's arm, making it difficult for Qin Shing to move. At this time, Qin Shing subconsciously felt the crisis coming from behind, which was an intuition honed by many years of life and death. He was shocked and quickly leaned over to avoid the long knife passing through the back of his head. However, there was a flaw in front of him. Old Ghost used the knife to kick Qin Shing's shoulder at the same time. Qin Shing had no chance to dodge, and was directly kicked back a few steps. On the other side, the two bodyguards of the Qin family were already struggling to deal with the three masters on Elder Long's side. There was a big gap between the strength of the two sides. Obviously, the bodyguards of the Qin family were no match for them. In just dozens of seconds, the bodyguards of the Qin family had been injured. When Qin Shing retreated, he did not panic. Instead, he took the opportunity to join the chaotic battle behind him. He punched the armpit of a man on Elder Long's side, and then took the opportunity to grab a long knife. In this way, he would not be in a disadvantageous position when fighting with Old Ghost. Old Ghost seemed to see through Qin Shing's mind. After taking advantage of Qin Shing, he did not stop. Holding the long knife in his hand, he pressed forward again and joined the chaotic battle. The crowd in the rain was in a mess in an instant. At this time, the man of the Lin family had already called Lin Changhe and reported the situation here. When Lin Changhe heard the news, he was so shocked that he broke into a cold sweat. He did not expect that Qin Shing would be attacked in Ningbo, and that these people would choose this time to attack him. If something really happened to Qin Shing, the Lin family would not be able to get away with it. Lin Changhe did not care about anything else. He immediately gathered the bodyguards of the Lin family and the security team he hired this time. All of them got in the car and rushed to the place where Qin Shing was attacked. However, he was afraid that they would not make it in time in the World Trade CBD of Beijing. After the meeting today, Qin Ran felt a little uneasy. At this time, her right eye kept twitching. Her left eye twitched for wealth, and her right eye twitched for disaster. Did something bad happen? Apart from the old man in prison, it seemed that Qin Shing, who was far away, was the only one she was most worried about. Thinking that Qin Shing was still in the city, Qin Ran felt a little worried and called Qin Shing immediately. However, Qin Ran called him twice in a row, but he did not answer. This time, Qin Ran was completely panicked. Did something bad happen to Qin Shing? At this time, Qin Ran could only call Chang Baji. Chapter 1082. What should he do? Before going to Ningbo, Qin Sheng had told his sister that old Madame Lin had passed away. Lin Su couldn't go back to China, so he had to go to Ningbo. Even if Lin Su was in China, old Madame Lin had been so nice to him, so he had to send her off. In this regard, Qin Ran did not say much. She felt that this was what she should do. She even took the initiative to ask Qin Sheng if he needed to inform Ryu, lest she would be angry when she found out. Qin Sheng even smiled and said that there was no need. Ryu was not such a petty woman. However, Qin Ran didn't know that Qin Sheng didn't take Chang Baji and the others with him, but only 2 bodyguards of the Qin family. If Qin Ran had known that, she would never have let Qin Sheng go to Ningbo at this time. Qin Ran knew that Qin Sheng would take Chang Baji with him wherever he went. Given Chang Baji's strength, Qin Ran could rest assured. However, Qin Sheng did not take Chang Baji with him this time. Instead, he went to Ningbo rashly. Of course, Qin Sheng did that to make sure that nothing would go wrong in Shenzhen. Moreover, he would be back in Ningbo soon after staying there for 2 days. However, he had been targeted by Elder Long. Elder Long wanted to kill Qin Sheng because of what had happened in Beijing. Elder Long wanted to end the Qin family's bloodline and make them repeat the same mistake. When Qin Ran called Chang Baji, she comforted herself that Qin Sheng might be busy. After all, old Madame Lin's business was more important, so he didn't have time to answer the phone. Soon, Chang Baji answered the phone. Qin Ran couldn't wait to ask, "Uncle Chang, what is Qin Sheng doing?" Chang Baji was stunned for a few seconds, but then he understood. It seemed that Qin Ran didn't know that Qin Sheng didn't let him go to Ningbo. He didn't think much about it and replied directly, "Qin Sheng went to Ningbo. Don't you know?" "I know," Qin Ran replied subconsciously, but then she was surprised. "You didn't go with him?" "No, he didn't let me go," Chang Baji replied honestly. Qin Ran was completely panicked and said in shock, "If he didn't let you go with him, who went to Ningbo with him? I can't get in touch with him now." Upon hearing Chang Baji's words, Chang Baji was also somewhat surprised. He immediately replied, "Qin Sheng chose 2 bodyguards to go to Ningbo. I'll call them right now. Don't worry. There should be no accidents in Ningbo." After hanging up the phone, Chang Baji immediately called Ningbo. In the office, after knowing that Chang Baji didn't accompany Qin Sheng to Ningbo, she became more anxious. She called Qin Sheng several times in succession, but nobody answered. Qin Ran was restless and paced back and forth in the office. At this time, Zhao Anji came in. When she saw Qin Ran like this, she frowned and said, Ran, what happened to you?" Qin Ran explained directly, "Auntie, I can't get in touch with Qin Sheng. I just called Uncle Chang and found out that he didn't go to Ningbo with Qin Sheng. Qin Sheng went to Ningbo with only 2 bodyguards. Could something have happened to him?" Zhao Anji was also a little abnormal today. She couldn't fall asleep last night, so her mental state today was relatively poor. She was even more distracted during the meeting. This wasn't her usual state. "Didn't he go to Ningbo? He should be fine. Don't worry about him." Zhao Anji comforted Qin Ran. Qin Ran shook her head and said, "I'm still a little worried. I hope he's fine." Zhao Anji continued, "If you're really worried, you can call the Lin family. Then you'll know about Qin Sheng's news." Except for Lin Su, Qin Ran didn't know anyone else in the Lin family. She didn't know how to contact them, but she should be able to get in touch with Lao Chang. In Shenzhen, Chang Baji called the 2 bodyguards but couldn't get through, not to mention Qin Sheng's phone. Something must be wrong. Chang Baji also felt somewhat nervous. He needed to contact the Lin family. This was the only way Chang Baji had left. Fortunately, he had Lin Changha's phone number, but he hadn't contacted him yet. Therefore, Chang Baji called Lin Changha immediately. But what made Chang Baji even more worried was that Lin Changha's phone line had been busy. Putting these things together, Chang Baji had to think more about it. He asked the others to continue to call the bodyguards of the Qin family and Qin Xing. Meanwhile, he kept calling Lin Changhe. No matter what, he had to contact the people in Ningbo to make sure that Qin Xing was fine. He hoped that all this was just a false alarm. A few minutes later, Chang Baji finally got through to Lin Changhe. Before Lin Changhe said anything, Chang Baji said, "Second Master Lin, this is Chang Baji. Did Qin Xing call you?" Originally, Lin Changhe didn't want to answer this strange number, but this number had called him several times. Lin Changhe was worried that it might be Qin Xing's people, but he didn't expect that it would be Chang Baji. He knew Chang Baji was Qin Xing's bodyguard, and his strength was beyond doubt. When Qin Xing came to Ningbo this time, he wondered why Qin Xing didn't take Chang Baji with him. After all, Chang Baji and Qin Xing were almost inseparable. Hearing this, Chang Baji was a little relieved. Then he asked, "Second Master Lin, I really want to ask you if you are with Qin Xing. The Qin family is looking for him, and we can't get in touch with him." "What? Didn't Qin Xing call you?" Lin Changhe said in surprise. Chang Baji frowned and said, "Second Master Lin, what do you mean?" "Something happened to Qin Xing." Lin Changhe didn't dare to waste any more time. He was really anxious to go to the place where Qin Xing was in trouble. Chang Baji stood up directly and asked, "Second Master Lin, what happened?" Lin Changhe hurriedly told Chang Baji about the phone call from the driver of the Lin family. Meanwhile, he told Chang Baji that he was on his way there with a group of people, and he had already informed the Public Security Bureau, which had started to take action. When Chang Baji heard this news, he couldn't stay calm even though he had experienced all kinds of storms. Because he knew something really happened. Chang Baji didn't talk nonsense with Lin Changhe anymore. No matter what happened there, he had to go to Ningbo as soon as possible. After hanging up the phone, Chang Baji called Hao Lei, He Wei and Fu Rong immediately. After the phone was connected, he said only one sentence: "Something happened to Qin Xing. Go to the airport and go to Ningbo as soon as possible." When Hao Lei, He Wei and Fu Rong heard this news, they all panicked. They put down everything they were doing and drove to the airport immediately without asking anything. At this time, Chang Baji also went downstairs with 2 bodyguards and went to the airport immediately. Meanwhile, he kept calling Qin Xing and the bodyguards of the Qin family. However, he still couldn't get through to them. The longer he waited, the more anxious Chang Baji became, because the probability of Qin Xing being in trouble was higher. If something really happened to Qin Xing, he couldn't imagine what the consequences would be. As for who did this to Qin Xing, Chang Baji didn't care about it at all. He could only find out when he arrived in Ningbo. Now, Chang Baji was not by Qin Xing's side, and there were only 2 bodyguards of the Qin family by Qin Xing's side. He could only hope that Qin Xing would be safe and sound. Chang Baji had been so busy that he had forgotten to call Qin Ran back. In the office in Beijing, Qin Ran couldn't wait anymore. She took the initiative to call Chang Baji again. She sounded very worried. "Uncle Chang, what on earth happened? Did you get in touch with the Lin family? Why didn't Qin Xing answer the phone? What on earth happened?" At this time, Chang Baji remembered that he forgot to call Qin Ran back. However, how could he tell Qin Ran about the situation in Ningbo? Chang Baji subconsciously thought for a few seconds. In the end, he decided not to alarm Qin Ran. After all, even if he told Qin Ran that Qin Xing was in danger in Ningbo, Qin Ran was too far away to help. He could wait until the Lin family confirmed the news. Maybe it wouldn't take long for Qin Xing to solve the problem. Otherwise, if Qin Ran was in a mess, she would definitely make a big fuss. At that time, too many people would be alarmed. Consequently, Chang Baji had to calm Qin Ran down and said, "I just called the Lin family. Qin Xing has something to deal with now. He will call you back after he finishes his work." After hearing Chong Baji's words, Qin Ran finally felt relieved. She let out a long sigh of relief and said, "Good. You scared me. I will wait for his call." After Qin Ran hung up the phone, Chong Baji instantly felt somewhat uneasy. If something really happened to Qin Shing, how could he explain it to Qin Ran? That was the truth. When Qin Ran felt relieved, Qin Shing was already in a desperate fight. After a chaotic fight, the two bodyguards of the Qin family were almost disabled and seriously injured. The situation on Qin Shing's side was not optimistic. In contrast, Lao Gui was unscathed. As for the other three helpers of Lao Gui, except for one who was lying on the ground because of Qin Shing's sneak attack, the other two were only slightly injured. What should Qin Shing do? Chapter 1083. At this moment, Qin Shing was extremely embarrassed. He hadn't been like this for a long time. The last time was when he escaped from Hangzhou and was chased to Huangmei County. Qin Shing held the long knife that he had snatched from Old Ghost in his hand. The blood on it had already been washed away by the rain, but there was still a lot of blood on Qin Shing's body. The blood had soaked through his clothes and dyed his white shirt red. Qin Shing was half kneeling on the ground. His black suit jacket had been taken off, and his white shirt was already in tatters. There were several shocking knife wounds on his body, which were bleeding. However, they were not fatal wounds. The two bodyguards of the Qin family were still struggling, because they had no choice. They could only try their best to survive. Otherwise, not to mention protecting Qin Shing, even they would have to stay here today. No one would be able to walk out alive. As for Old Ghost, he held a long saber in his hand and stared at Qin Shing, who was struggling on his deathbed, with a smile. Although they had already sacrificed one of their companions, it was not a big deal, because their strength could absolutely crush Qin Shing's side. The final result was already determined. This time, no one could save Qin Shing. I said, "If you surrender, I will give you a whole body. Why do you have to do this?" Old Ghost wiped the rain on his face and said arrogantly. Qin Shing slowly got up, held the long saber in his hand across his chest, and said, "Do you think I will? Alas, why are you always so stubborn? If you can't change the result, just accept it. Isn't that good?" Old Ghost walked forward unhurriedly and said. Qin Shing sneered and said, "Don't talk so much nonsense when you are killing people. Otherwise, when the other side's reinforcements arrive, will you be the one to die?" Old Ghost didn't expect Qin Shing to be so stubborn. He had to say, "Don't worry. If I can't even take these factors into account, how could I choose to kill you here? But thank you for your reminder. Let me send you on your way." After that, Old Ghost signaled his two companions to attack at the same time. On the outskirts of the mountain far away from the urban area of Ningbo, because of this untimely heavy rain, it was almost deserted. Moreover, the intersection of the road had been blocked. Qin Shing's situation was really worrying. He didn't know if they could get out of here. Qin Shing felt somewhat helpless. Maybe he owed Lin Su too much. That was why he had such an encounter in Ningbo. It seemed that he had also gone through hardships in Ningbo last time. Lao Gui's two companions had already taken action. Before Qin Shing could do anything, the two bodyguards next to him had already risked their lives to fight against him. They would protect Qin Shing even at the cost of their lives. Anyway, today's results seemed to be like this, and they had no chance to make a comeback. Even if they died, it seemed that as long as Qin Shing was alive, he could avenge them. "No!" Qin Shing hurriedly stopped her. Unfortunately, it was too late. The two seriously injured bodyguards were already an arrow at the end of its flight. It was impossible for them to bring any substantial threat to Old Ghost. Seeing that they were still struggling, Old Ghost's companions couldn't help but feel pained and rushed over. The fight between the two had ended before it even started. Old Ghost's two companions effortlessly dealt with the two bodyguards of the Qin family. The long knives in their hands stabbed into the bodies of the Qin family's bodyguard. The Qin family's bodyguards completely fell down and no longer had the chance to stand up. Qin Shing didn't have time to stop them, and they died just like that. This scene ignited all of Qin Shing's anger. Qin Shing knew that he had fallen into a desperate situation. This was already the most dangerous time in his life. He had to fight to the death to have a chance to survive. In the past, he had a lot of helpers. If he couldn't beat them, he could still escape. Where there's life, there's hope. But this time, Qin Shing didn't even have the chance to escape, because he didn't have the strength to escape at all, because the opponent's strength was too strong. However, Qin Shing would never admit defeat like this. He would never admit defeat. Only by fighting for his life could he win. If he didn't fight, he would only die. As for the man sent by the Lin family, when Qin Shing and the others were fighting, the man wanted to take the opportunity to escape. He didn't need to risk his life for Qin Shing, these people who had nothing to do with him. Moreover, he was just an ordinary driver of the Lin family, and he only wanted to support his family. How could he experience such a thing? Naturally, he didn't want to die like this. After all, he had a wife and children. Unfortunately, how could Old Ghost allow anyone to leave alive? When he was about to run, he had already been dealt with a knife. This man from the Lin family fell on the side of the road just like this. It could be said that he died with a grievance. The current situation was that on Old Ghost's side, in addition to Old Ghost who was only slightly injured, there were still two companions who still maintained their combat power, while Qin Shing was the only one left on his side. The ending seemed to be doomed. Qin Shing, now you're the only one left. Are you still not convinced? Old Ghost said happily. This time, he didn't fail his mission. Finally, he could successfully complete the task given by Elder Long. Qin Shing picked up the long knife in his hand and said, "If you want to kill me, then you have to have the ability to take it." After that, Qin Shing no longer talked nonsense. He suddenly got up and rushed toward Old Ghost with unprecedented strength. The man in front of him directly blocked Qin Shing's way. The two sides immediately fought. The long saber in Qin Shing's hand suddenly slashed down, forcing the man to take 2 steps back. It was only by relying on his strong arm strength that he pushed Qin Shing out. However, Qin Shing immediately hooked a raindrop with his foot and went straight to the opposite side. The man dodged subconsciously, but the long knife in Qin Shing's hand had already slashed toward his chest. It seemed that the man was about to be injured. Fortunately, another man next to him had already made a move. He directly blocked his companion's chest with his long knife, making it difficult for Qin Shing to get close. At the same time, the man kicked Qin Shing's waist, forcing Qin Shing to step back. However, Qin Shing did not retreat. He took the man's kick. At the same time, it seemed that he continued to attack the first man, but the long knife in his hand suddenly slashed along the tip of the second man's knife. The man did not react at first, but when he did, it was already too late. Qin Shing's knife directly slashed across the man's face, leaving a shocking wound. Blood gushed out in an instant. Unfortunately, it only stayed for a few seconds before it was directly washed away by the rain. The man's heart-wrenching cry resounded through the whole mountain. Qin Shing's action was equivalent to exposing himself. When he succeeded in the surprise attack, the first man had already come to his senses. The long knife in his hand looked along Qin Shing's shoulder. Fortunately, Qin Shing had a countermeasure. He completely gave up on the first man and continued to go straight to the second man. After all, this man was the weakest at this time. If this knife just now had slashed the man's eyes, it could not have been better. Then he would have directly solved a problem, but it was a pity. Qin Shing found the right opportunity and instantly burst out. He grabbed the man's arm, which was slashing at him randomly, and directly stabbed the man's abdomen with the knife. Before the man came to his senses, Qin Shing had completely solved the problem. The price Qin Shing paid for doing so was that the first man used a long saber to cut a bloody wound on his back, which almost tore Qin Shing's entire shirt apart. The wound was more than 10 centimeters long, and the flesh inside could be seen clearly. Qin Shing was in so much pain that he gritted his teeth. "You're right." However, Qin Shing did not flinch. He knew that he could not leave his back to that man again. Otherwise, he would lose his life here. He pulled the second man and turned around abruptly. As expected, the first man's long saber attacked again. However, this time, his saber slashed on his companion's shoulder. Qin Shing also took the opportunity to kick his abdomen, which repelled the man. At this time, Qin Shing pulled out the long knife, endured the pain of several knife wounds on his body, and wanted to take down the first man in one go. Perhaps he had already become numb to the pain, or perhaps Qin Shing's willpower was particularly strong. After all, he had experienced all kinds of desperate situations and suffered all kinds of injuries. The last time, he lay in bed for a full half a year, and Lin Su took care of him for half a year, which allowed him to recover. This time, no matter how miserable it was nothing more than the first time, because if the Qin family did not intervene that time, he would have died there. At this time, Old Ghost, who had been watching the show, made his move again. It could not be said that Old Ghost was watching the show. After all, this scene only lasted for a few seconds. Old Ghost did not expect Qin Shing to suddenly burst out with such great strength this time, which made him a little surprised. Old Ghost kicked Qin Shing's already injured shoulder very lightly, making Qin Shing, who still had a chance, fall heavily into the rain, instantly staining the surrounding ground red. When Qin Shing wanted to stand up, Old Ghost had quietly arrived in front of him, and the long knife in his hand fell down. Qin Shing hurriedly wanted to resist, but the long knife was slashed far away by Old Ghost's knife. Old Ghost's strength was very overbearing, and Qin Shing's wrist was a little painful. He finally realized how terrifying Old Ghost's strength was. No wonder Lao Chang said that Old Ghost's strength might not be weaker than his, while Qin Shing's strength was only close to Lao Chang's. Wanting to kill Old Ghost in such a desperate situation seemed to be a fool's talk. At this time, Qin Shing had not yet stood up and was completely at a disadvantage. He wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to get up and continue fighting, but Old Ghost did not give him a chance. He directly pressed his knee heavily on his chest, which broke several of Qin Shing's ribs. Qin Shing coughed violently, followed by 2 mouthfuls of blood. Qin Shing was really a little miserable like this. "That's enough. Do you really think you're so powerful?" Old Ghost's words completely sentenced Qin Shing to death. But would Qin Shing just admit defeat like this? No, Qin Shing would never admit defeat, unless he died. So Qin Shing glared at Old Ghost and punched Old Ghost's face without warning. However, Old Ghost did not escape at all and took Qin Shing's punch. However, in the next second Old Ghost's eyes burned with rage. He grabbed Qin Shing's wrist with his left hand, making it impossible for Qin Shing to resist. At this time, his right hand, which was holding the long saber, fell straight down. Under Qin Shing's horrified eyes, the long saber was directly inserted into Qin Shing's shoulder. The long saber penetrated Qin Shing's shoulder and stabbed into the ground. Qin Shing was nailed to the ground just like that. He was in so much pain that he roared at the sky. He had completely fallen into madness and his brain was a little fuzzy. However, Old Ghost grinned and laughed. But at this moment, Old Ghost's laughter was a little scary. "I said, I can leave you a whole body, but unfortunately, you refused," Old Ghost said gloomily. The pain from the wounds all over his body had already destroyed Qin Shing's willpower. His consciousness was getting more and more blurred, and he seemed to be unable to hear Old Ghost's voice. However, he still wanted to raise his arm and continue fighting. Because he didn't want to die here, he still had a lot of things to do. And he never thought that he would die in Ningbo, die here. Was he really going to die here? No, he couldn't, so Qin Shing still had to fight. He used all his strength to slowly lift the arm that was nailed to the ground, but this arm only rose a little before it fell heavily to the ground. Old Ghost shook his head and smiled bitterly. Wasn't it a sense of accomplishment to be able to kill such a person with his own hands? After all, this was Master Qin's son. Unfortunately, the final result was like this. Old Ghost let out a long sigh. He didn't want to continue to delay, otherwise they wouldn't be able to leave smoothly. So Old Ghost slowly pulled out the long knife, and even pulled out Qin Shing's flesh and blood. Blood flowed along the arm all over the ground. Even if Old Ghost didn't do anything, Qin Shing would definitely die from excessive blood loss. Old Ghost raised the long knife and sighed. Young Master Qin, it's time to send you on your way. Was Qin Shing really going to die here? Chapter 1084. It was a sunny day in Beijing. Elder Long was in a good mood today. He went to the newly built China Zun building, which happened to be a company that had just moved into the building. Elder Long came here to have a look, which surprised the person in charge. He didn't know who Elder Long was, but the person who followed Elder Long was his boss. The office of the person in charge was naturally vacated by Elder Long. He didn't even have the right to stay next to Elder Long, so he went to work in the conference room. There were 2 bodyguards at the door of the office, preventing anyone from entering. Except for Elder Long and the unknown man, there was no one else in the office. The weather is so good today. The sky is so clear. Elder Long stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window with his walking stick and looked at the scenery outside. China Zun building was the tallest building in Beijing, which was 528 meters high. Standing there, one could see the whole city of Beijing. Perhaps it was because of this that Elder Long rarely came out to relax. The owner behind him was the famous CITIC Group. This office happened to face the direction of Chang'an Street. From here, one could not only see the whole Chang'an Street, but also the Forbidden City in the distance, let alone the Beijing Square. Elder Long had been rooted in this city for his entire life. He had seen the desolate city transform into its current prosperous state. He had also seen all kinds of people on the streets take to the stage to pay their respects. He didn't dare to say how powerful he was, but he believed that he could be considered one of them. Over the years, he had been involved in too many things. He had trained many young people and offended too many big shots and big families. However, he was alone. What was there to be afraid of? Elder Long looked up at the time on the wall and murmured to himself, "It's time to see the result." The man in his 60s immediately came forward and said, "Uncle Long, what did you say?" Elder Long liked this nephew who was not related to him by blood. This was also because his father had helped him a lot in the past. Unfortunately, his character was hesitant and his ability was mediocre. So in the end, he did not choose to be an official. Instead, he chose to be a businessman. After today, our good days will come to an end. Many things will change, Elder Long muttered. The man didn't quite understand. Anyway, he knew that old Master Qin had been in a bad mood recently because of the Qin family's matter. However, sixth uncle and the others were not capable enough, so old Master Qin was also involved. He guessed that he was feeling emotional about this matter. At this time, the clear skies of Suzhou City were suddenly blown by strong winds without any warning. This was a little strange. It was also in the World Trade Center, but not in the same building. Even though Qin Ran had answered Changbaji's call, her mood did not ease at all. Her eyelids were still twitching, and her heart was beating faster. Even her breathing was not smooth. Ran, are you all right? If you can't take it, let's go to the hospital." Zhao Anji was worried that there might be something wrong with Qin Ran's body. She had indeed been tired recently. Qin Ran was a little confused. She hadn't felt this way for a long time. What was going on today? Grandma was fine, so she called her aunt. Her husband should be fine too. The only thing she was worried about was her brother. Chong Baji had already called her back. Auntie, maybe I'm too tired. I'll be fine after a short rest. Qin Ran insisted. There were 2 meetings in the afternoon, and she didn't want to waste time in the hospital. Zhao Anji didn't say anything, so she shook her head helplessly. At the entrance of Nanchang Street, Song Ryu had just left her teacher's place. It was rare for her teacher to have some time, so Song Ryu reported her decision to her teacher. This decision would determine her future for the next 5 years, so her teacher hoped that she would be careful. She didn't know whether she was thinking about it or just a little absent-minded. Song Ryu didn't go far when she was distracted and rear-ended a car with a military license plate at the traffic light. She had never had any accidents in all her years of driving. Most of the time, it was other people who caused accidents. This was the first time in her life. Fortunately, she didn't drive very fast, or it would be a big problem. Before Song Ryu got out of the car, 2 men in military uniforms got out of the Audi with the military license plate in front of her. One should be the driver, and the other should be the secretary. Song Ryu looked at the license plate. It should be the car of a leader of the military commission. After all the people who went in and out of this area were high-level leaders. After the accident, the policeman on duty immediately rushed over. After all, it was a special area, and they couldn't allow anything to happen. Moreover, they had noticed that the Audi was of a high level. Song Ryu also got out of the car slowly. After all, she had rear-ended someone, so she had nothing to say. After getting out of the car, Song Ryu apologized sincerely. Sorry, I was distracted. The 2 soldiers were very vigilant. Even though they saw a beautiful woman, they still said cautiously, Please show me your driver's license. Song Ryu didn't say anything more. She handed her driver's license and her work permit to them, so that they would be relieved. After all, her identity was special, and they might be nervous. At this time, the leader in the back seat of the Audi suddenly got out of the car. As soon as he got out of the car, he looked at Song Ryu and waved. Ryu, why are you here? When Song Ryu saw the old general with 2 gold stars on his shoulders and gray hair, she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She didn't expect to see an acquaintance. She walked over quickly and said, Uncle Han, I didn't expect to see you here. I'm sorry. I was distracted just now, so I rear-ended someone. Child, it's just a small matter. As long as you're fine, it's okay. The old general in military uniform smiled. Song Ryu smiled embarrassedly. Since they were acquaintances, it would be easy to follow the normal procedures. It was 8 o'clock in the evening in Los Angeles. After dinner, Xue Qinyan accompanied Lin Su to walk on the street outside. This was the rich area of Los Angeles, where elites from Silicon Valley and superstars from Hollywood live. Therefore, they didn't have to worry about the security at night. The environment in the United States was like this. The more poor people gathered, the less safe it was, and the more rich people gathered, the safer it was. Xue Qinyan had been on edge these days. She tried to find all kinds of things to keep Lin Su busy. She almost didn't allow Lin Su to use her mobile phone. She deliberately said that the radiation of mobile phones was bad for the fetus and so on. Lin Su, a top student who didn't believe in such crooked ways, was a little worried. In the end, she almost stopped using her mobile phone for the sake of the baby. Walking on the street, Lin Su suddenly stopped and said excitedly, Sister, I feel it. Although it was safer here, they still brought bodyguards when they went out just in case. Lin Su was so precious now. The baby in her belly was very likely to be the heir of the Qin family in the future. Although the Qin family had lost the aircraft carrier Chang'an system, it was still a big tree with deep root. Xue Qinyan was surprised and said, Feel what? The little guy kicked me. It kicked me, Lin Su said in surprise. She had cut her long hair and changed it to a short, shoulder-length hair. After all, a beauty was a beauty. No matter what hairstyle it was beautiful. Even Xue Qinyan thought that Lin Su looked more charming with short hair than before. Xue Qinyan was also surprised and said, "Really? Let me hear it." She immediately squatted down and put her face on Lin Su's belly. She really felt the little guy's throbbing. Xue Qinyan said happily, "I feel it too." After getting up, the two women looked at each other and smiled happily. Xue Qinyan asked without any warning, Su, do you like boys or girls?" She had never asked this question before. Xue Qinyan didn't ask, but it didn't mean that Lin Su didn't think about it. She said lightly, "I like girls and I hope it will be a girl. In this way she can grow up safely and live happily for the rest of her life." After Lin Su said this, Xue Qinyan roughly understood what Lin Su meant. It was not that Lin Su didn't like boys, but she didn't want to give birth to a boy. Because if it was a boy, he might be like Qin Xing, carrying all kinds of shackles for the rest of his life. Most of the time, he lived for others and for the family, not for himself. In this way, he would not be happy for the rest of his life. Lin Su didn't want her child to live like this for the rest of his life. Xue Qinyan didn't say much. She just nodded and said, "Then give birth to a girl." In the heavy rain in Ningbo, Qin Xing's consciousness was getting blurrier and blurrier. Not to mention that several ribs in his chest were broken, the several fatal knife wounds on his body had already made him tired to deal with them. His shoulder no longer belonged to him. Blood continued to flow along the rain to the roadside. He had no strength to resist anymore, and his eyes could hardly see the old ghost. Was he really going to die? It was said that when people died they would think of their life. It seemed that this was the case last time. He thought of a life without much achievements, which could be said to be a life of mediocrity. What about this time? He didn't think so much. He only thought of regrets. There were really too many regrets in this life. It seemed that he didn't know how to make up for some of them. If he had known that he was going to die like this, he wouldn't have had so many scruples in this life, and he wouldn't have hurt so many people. He lived a brilliant life without regret. He didn't owe anyone anything, and he didn't care about anyone's eyes. It was just that there were too many regrets. The biggest regret might be that he couldn't see his child. He was an incompetent father. He hoped that the child wouldn't hate him. As for other regrets, Qin Xing didn't have time to think about them. Now he only hoped that after he died, they wouldn't be sad. Don't be sad or he would feel guilty. But how could he not be sad? Qin Xing's consciousness became more and more blurred, and his eyes were about to close. He seemed to see the old ghost's long knife falling. The last sentence in his mind was, "Is he really going to die like this?" However, the old ghost's long knife didn't fall as he wished. When the old ghost's long knife fell, a few silver needles came out of nowhere and instantly drilled into several acupuncture points on his arm that was holding the knife. His whole arm was directly numb, and the long knife in his hand was naturally useless. "Who?" The old ghost reacted in an instant, hurriedly got up and shouted. He only heard a woman's voice behind him, saying gloomily, "You shouldn't have touched him." The old ghost subconsciously turned around, only to see a beautiful and somewhat shocking woman standing behind him, and his companion had fallen to the ground, vomiting blood. For a second, the old ghost thought that this woman might be a ghost. However, he never believed in these things. "Who are you?" the old ghost asked angrily, and at the same time, he was ready to make a move. He knew that he didn't have more time. He had already killed Qin Xing. Why did such a strange woman rush out halfway? If he couldn't kill Qin Xing today, he really didn't know how to explain it to Elder Long later, so he wouldn't miss this opportunity. It was just that the woman in front of him was really a bit strange. It was already terrible that she appeared silently, and she seemed to have the power of charm. As long as he looked at her, he couldn't help but be absent-minded. Maybe she was really too beautiful, so beautiful that it was a little unreal, like a woman in this world. The woman in white slowly walked forward and said in an extremely cold voice, "You don't need to know." When the woman finished this sentence, the old ghost suddenly bled from his 7 orifices and fell backward. He didn't even have the chance to prepare to make a move. He fell heavily in the heavy rain and died with his eyes open. The old ghost died just like that? This scene was simply too terrifying. The old ghost was an existence that even Chang Baji felt a little scared of. How could he suddenly die without even having the chance to make a move? How terrifying was this woman? Was she a human or a ghost? All of this actually didn't matter, because at least she was here to save Qin Shing. At this time, the woman had already walked in front of Qin Shing. She slowly squatted down and looked at Qin Shing, who was in a sorry state and whose life was uncertain. She said with some distress, "Silly boy, let's go, Aunt will take you home." Chapter 1085. Something really happened. Old Ghost died just like that. His death was a little sudden, a little terrifying, and a little sullen. He was a master whose strength was beyond doubt on Elder Long's side. He was a character whom Elder Long had high hopes on and Chang Baji was afraid of. He was a ruthless person who had carefully followed Qin Shing for half a month and finally chose the best time to take action. He was a winner who had the upper hand in this assassination and would never lose. Old Ghost died suddenly. Old Ghost's ending was like that of a peerless master in the movies. With a series of dazzling moves, he beat the opponent until he couldn't fight back. Just as he was about to have the last laugh, a passerby with unknown strength suddenly appeared and killed Old Ghost in one move. Even Old Ghost found it hard to believe, not to mention everyone present. But it was a fact that Old Ghost was dead. Unknowingly, the woman's appearance had changed into a completely different appearance from before. If Old Ghost was still alive, he would probably be scared to death again. Why was this like changing faces in Sichuan opera? If Qin Shing was still awake, if he could still recognize this woman, then he would realize that from the first time he saw this woman, to her appearance just now, to the current appearance of this woman, this was already the third appearance of this woman. The only difference was that this woman's appearance was very beautiful every time, so beautiful that it was a little unreal. The woman held Qin Shing in her arms and walked into the woods quietly. Finally, she disappeared from sight. As for the scene of the incident, there were only corpses left. Anyone who saw it would be terrified. At the Shenzhen airport, Chang Baji had already met Hao Lei, Fu Rong, and He Wei. When he saw Chang Baji, Hao Lei asked nervously, "Lao Chang, what happened? What happened to Qin Shing?" If it was not an emergency, Chang Baji would not have called them to go to Ningbo at this time. Because of this, Hao Lei was very worried. "Qin Shing was attacked in Ningbo," Chang Baji replied simply. Hao Lei was shocked. "What happened? What's the situation now? Is Qin Shing hurt?" "The Lin family is on their way. The current situation is unknown, so I told you to go to Ningbo immediately," Chang Baji said in a low voice. There was still no news until now, which made Chang Baji more and more worried. If something really happened, he wouldn't be able to explain it to Qin Ran. When he was on the way, he called the Lin family again. However, the Lin family had not arrived at the scene of the incident. They had not called him back yet. The most important thing was that he still could not get in touch with Qin Shing. Fu Rong and He Wei had already guessed what was going on. They frowned and said, "I told you that we must have someone by his side. That way we can guarantee that nothing will happen. Who knows if he will take the risk out of desperation? Why didn't you listen to me?" Hao Lei looked at He Wei and said, "Now is not the time to talk about this. Moreover, this is Qin Shing's decision. What can we do? Stop quarreling. Let's get to Ningbo first. As for the others, we'll wait for the news from the Lin family," Chang Baji said firmly. Hao Lei stopped talking. Fu Rong looked at He Wei and said, "Report to Old Master immediately. See if you can contact our friends in Ningbo." In Beijing, in Old Master He's courtyard house, the old man was in a good mood today. He was feeding the fish in the pavilion. When the wind blew, the housekeeper hurriedly came over to let him in, telling him not to catch a cold. As soon as the old man stood up, he received a call from He Wei. He had a hunch that something bad must have happened to him. As expected, after he answered the call, He Wei said, "Old Master, something happened to Qin Xing in Ningbo." The old man's heart suddenly skipped a beat in Ningbo. When Lin Changhe arrived at the scene with the rest of the Lin family, the woman had already disappeared with Qin Xing. The Lin family's cars were parked a little far away. The Ningbo police arrived a few minutes earlier than them. Seeing such a terrible scene, they had already cordoned off the area and reported to the leaders of the municipal bureau, asking for help. With such a huge incident happening, probably no one would dare to hide it from him. Lin Changhe saw the situation over there from a distance, especially the 5 or 6 corpses lying on the ground. He was completely dumbfounded and his mood fell to the bottom. Thinking of the fact that he could not get in touch with Qin Xing until now, Lin Changhe seemed to have guessed the most dreaded possibility. If that was the case, the sky of Ningbo would fall. After getting out of the car, Lin Changhe felt a little weak in his legs. Although he was used to all kinds of big scenes, he still did not dare to walk over. He had to be supported by Lin Zhe and the others to go over. The only thing he prayed for was that Qin Xing would be fine. He hoped that Qin Xing's dead body was not among them. Otherwise, the whole Lin family would not be able to hold on, not to mention him. However, it seemed that the hope was somewhat slim. Before they walked far, Lin Changhe and the others were stopped by the police. Lin Changhe said in a trembling voice, "Who's the person in charge?" "I'm Lin Changhe from the Lin family. I've already called your leader." The Lin family was powerful in Ningbo. Everyone knew about it. The person in charge, who was checking the scene, guessed that the Lin family had arrived, because it was the Lin family who had asked the police for help. He hurried over to greet them and introduced himself. At the same time, he said with a livid face, "Second Master Lin, this is too big. 7 people were killed at the scene. No one can cover it up. I've already reported it to my leader. They are all on their way here." The person in charge did not know what the Lin family wanted to do, nor did he know the relationship between the Lin family and this matter. He could only say this, hoping that the Lin family would be sensible. When Lin Changhe heard that 7 people had died at the scene, he almost passed out. He knew what the person in charge meant, but he had to know whether Qin Xing was involved in it or not. If Qin Xing was involved, not to mention Ningbo, even Zhujiang couldn't keep it under control, let alone the Lin family. I don't want to make it difficult for you. I just want to confirm the identity of the dead." Lin Changhe stuttered. He had never been so nervous before. Before the person in charge answered, he directly looked at Lin Zhe and said, "Lin Zhe, you go in and have a look." At this time, Lin Zhe was already scared out of his wits. He was even more scared than Lin Changhe. However, since his second uncle had already said it, he had to bite the bullet and go in. Lin Zhe plucked up his courage and walked in anxiously. He clenched his fists and encouraged himself. Before he arrived at the scene, Lin Zhe directly vomited, because the scene was too horrible. He had never seen such a scene before. Fortunately, Lin Zhe was smart. Or maybe he did not dare to face the reality. He took out his phone in a hurry, found Qin Xing's photo, and handed it to the policeman beside him. "Help me check if this man is among the dead." The policeman took the phone and looked at it carefully before he said, "No." Lin Zhe was stunned for a few seconds. He asked incredulously, "Are you sure? Take a good look at it. Is it true?" The policeman was also a little worried. He took the phone in and looked at it again. After he was sure that there was no one, he came back and said, "No." Lin Zhe was instantly overjoyed. He ran over in a hurry and said, second uncle, there is no Qin Shing. There is no Qin Shing." When he heard the news, Lin Changhe suddenly fainted. He had been tired for several days because of the old lady's affair. He was nervous all the way here. Especially when he saw the scene, he was overjoyed when he was sure that Qin Shing was not among the dead. Lin Zhe and the others hurried to help Lin Changhe get in the car to rest. After a while, the Lin family figured out the identity of the dead, but the result made them nervous again. That was, although Qin Shing was not among the dead, the 2 bodyguards of the Qin family and the driver of the Lin family were all dead. As for the other 4 people, they did not know them. They might be killers. Then, what about Qin Shing? Was he dead or alive? After Lin Changhe woke up, he did not dare to hide the news. He contacted the Ningbo Municipal Public Security Bureau and other departments to find Qin Shing's whereabouts. On the other hand, he called Chang Baji immediately. Because this matter involved a lot of people, he did not dare to hide it. Especially the Zhu family behind the Qin family. At Shenzhen Baoan Airport, Chang Baji and the others were waiting in the waiting hall to board the plane. At this time, Lin Changhe finally called. After the call was put through, Lin Changhe immediately repeated the situation here to Chang Baji. He tried to use the simplest words to make it clear. However, after Chang Baji heard it, his phone directly fell to the ground. Because he was very clear about how serious this matter was. This time, something really happened. Chapter 1086. The situation in Ningbo was very clear. The 2 bodyguards of the Qin family died tragically. The Lin family's chauffeur had lost his life. The rest of the corpses should be the killers who came to kill Qin Shing, and the Ningbo police had already started to investigate this big case under the urging of the Lin family. As for how many assassins were on the move, whether it was all the assassins here, or if other assassins had escaped, no one knew. Furthermore, the identities of these assassins were still unknown. Was Qin Shing dead or alive? The Lin family did not dare to make a conclusion. However, they all knew that there were 3 possibilities. One was that Qin Shing was lucky enough to escape and was still alive. The other possibility was that Qin Shing was already dead. These killers were only a part of them. The others had already escaped after killing Qin Shing. The third possibility was that other killers took Qin Shing away. At present, the possibility of the second possibility was very small. Otherwise, Qin Shing's body should be here. It was impossible for them to leave with the body. The first and third possibilities were the most probable. If it was the first one, it would be the best. It would not take long for Qin Shing to contact them. If it was the third possibility, it was still acceptable. As long as Qin Shing was not dead, everything was possible. However, the current situation was no longer something that the Lin family could control. Only the Qin family and the Zhu family could mobilize more resources. Therefore, Lin Changhe contacted Chang Baji immediately. Although Chang Baji had the contact information of the Zhu family, he dared not disturb Lin Changhe rashly. Lin Changhe's phone call made Chang Baji completely panic. He stood still and his mind went blank. He hadn't lost his composure like this for a long time. Hao Lei shook Chang Baji's shoulder and asked, "Lao Chang, what happened?" After Chang Baji came back to his senses, he said slowly, "Something happened to Qin Shing." When Chang Baji told the others about what the Lin family had said, Hao Lei, Fu Rong, and He Wei all realized that something terrible had happened. If it was true, Qin Shing would probably be in danger. "What should we do now?" Hao Lei asked helplessly. Chang Baji forced himself to calm down and said, "At present, this news is confidential. No one is allowed to leak it out. Let's go to Ningbo first to understand the specific situation. As for the rest, let me handle it." After Chang Baji finished speaking, he looked at He Wei and Fu Rong. His meaning was clear. Before they understood what was going on, they must not leak this information. Although He Wei and Fu Rong were a little uncomfortable, they could only respect Chang Baji's decision. At this time, Hao Lei continued to ask, "You didn't inform the Qin family? This news can't be kept a secret." Chang Baji shook his head and smiled bitterly. How could he not inform the Qin family? He had already concealed the news from Qin Ran. If he continued to conceal it at this time, he would not be able to bear the responsibility. Moreover, if the Qin family and the Zhu family behind the Qin family didn't take action, who could control this matter? "I'll make the call," Chang Baji said firmly. Beijing International Trade CBD. Qin Ran was chatting with Zhao Anji and Chang Sini in the office. Perhaps because Qin Ran was not in a good mood today, Zhao Anji dragged Chang Sini to accompany her to relieve her stress. At this time, Chang Baji called. Qin Ran thought that there was finally news from Qin Xing's side. It should be fine now. Maybe she was too tired today, so she was so paranoid. Zhao Anji also saw that it was a call from Lao Chang. She smiled and said, "It should be that Qin Xing has finished his work." Qin Ran did not think much. She picked up the phone and said, "Uncle Chang, has Qin Xing finished his work?" Qin Ran did not think too much about it. She thought that Qin Xing would call her back as soon as he finished his work. She subconsciously thought that Chang Baji was with Qin Xing. "Qin Ran, something happened to Qin Xing." Chang Baji gritted his teeth and said. When hearing this, the smile on Qin Ran's face gradually disappeared. In the end, it was as cold as ice. The light in her eyes also gradually disappeared, and in the end, it was completely dark. At this moment, Qin Ran did not know what was going on in her mind at all. The thing that she was most worried about had happened. Why? She only felt that the sky had collapsed. Her heart began to beat faster, but it became more and more difficult for her to breathe. Bang! Just when Zhao Anji and Chang Sini were confused, Qin Ran suddenly blacked out. She suddenly fainted and fell directly on the sofa. Zhao Anji and Chang Sini were stunned for half a second. When they came to their senses, they rushed over in a hurry and shouted, Qin Ran, what's wrong? What's wrong?" The secretaries and assistants outside the door heard the shouting inside, and did not know what had happened. They also rushed in hurriedly. One of the secretaries had learned emergency medicine. She quickly ran over and pinched Qin Ran. Someone immediately took out a towel from the bathroom and ran over. Someone had already called 120. The whole office was in a mess in an instant. Actually, Qin Ran was not seriously injured. She just lost consciousness in an instant because of the anxiety. She woke up after a few seconds of pinching. The secretary hurriedly asked, "Boss Qin, how do you feel?" Qin Ran did not pay attention to her. Instead, she looked at the aunt, Zhao Anji. She did not know when her eyes had turned red. Tears were welling up in her eyes, but her mouth was trembling and she could not say a word. Zhao Anji said anxiously, Ran, what's wrong? What's wrong?" At this time, Qin Ran gritted her teeth and said slowly, Aunt, Qin Sheng is in trouble." Bang! The lethality of this sentence was too great. It was like a bolt from the blue. Zhao Anji blacked out and suddenly fell down. This time, she was the one who fainted. The next second, the whole office was in a mess again. In Shenzhen, Chang Baji knew that this news might have an impact on the Qin family, but he still had to inform them. He had been waiting for Qin Ran to scold him, because he had decided to hide it from Qin Ran in the beginning. Although it was just a white lie, he did not want Qin Ran to worry before he figured out what was going on. However, no matter what, he had to bear this responsibility. However, Qin Ran did not call Chang Baji again. Chang Baji waited until the plane took off, but did not receive Qin Ran's call. He knew that the Qin family might be in a mess. Now, the only thing they could do was to rush to Ningbo immediately. They had to find Qin Shing by all means. At the same time, they had to find out who was behind this. In the Qin family's villa, Qin Ran and Zhao Anji had been sent back. At the same time, 4 medical staff were arranged to be on standby. Chang Sini did not leave them at all. She even gave an order to all the secretaries and assistants present today. If anyone leaked what had happened today, they would be fired immediately. Chang Sini was very clear about the storm this news could bring. Why didn't Qin Ran call Chang Baji? Because Qin Ran directly called the Lin family. After coming to herself, Qin Ran remembered that Chang Baji was not in Ningbo, so Chang Baji also got the news from the Lin family. Only the Lin family knew what had happened. It was very easy for her to get the contact information of the Lin family. Lin Changhe was in charge of this matter. Now the Lin family was in a mess, and they were using all the resources to find Qin Shing. When Lin Changhe received Qin Ran's call, everything was within his expectation. He didn't hide anything and told Qin Ran all the things he knew today. At this moment, Qin Ran knew how serious it was. Therefore, Qin Ran fainted again. Fortunately, there were medical staff around this time. After Qin Ran woke up, she was very weak, but she did not dare to fall down again, because she knew she had to rush to Ningbo. However, no one could rest assured about Qin Ran's current condition. Although everyone was against it, Qin Ran was determined to go there. But before leaving, Qin Ran had one thing to do. Because she knew that Qin Shing's accident was not only related to the Qin family, but also involved in a big conspiracy. Moreover, she could not bear all of this, so she had to inform her uncle and small aunt. From this moment on, the Zhu family officially appeared. Chapter 1087. I Got It. Beijing, China's Supreme Building. Elder Long had not left yet. He was quietly waiting for the news from Ningbo. However, it seemed that it would take a long time for him to get the news. When Old Ghost reported previously, he said that they were ready to take action. If nothing went wrong, they would finish the task within an hour. At that time, they would definitely take Qin Shing's life. However, more than an hour had passed. It could be said that Old Ghost had made full preparations for this task. Elder Long also believed that Old Ghost could complete the task smoothly. After all, without the protection of Chang Baji and the others, Qin Shing seemed to be the prey in the mouth of a tiger, who had no chance to resist at all. However, why hadn't Old Ghost reported the situation until now? Could it be that there was an accident? Elder Long did not take the initiative to contact Old Ghost. He only had one-way communication with Old Ghost. As for the others, they were not qualified to contact him at all. Old Ghost would naturally contact him after the mission was over, and he would never use his own phone to contact him. This was to prevent Elder Long from being implicated if the mission failed. If Old Ghost didn't contact him, then there was only one possibility. The mission had failed. That shouldn't be the case, Elder Long muttered. The man at the back didn't know what Elder Long was waiting for, but he didn't dare to ask anything. He just waited quietly by her side. He heard that Elder Long was going to meet with the big boss of CITIC. Recently, they had been facing financial problems. He knew what was going on. All of this was because of that sixth uncle. He went for wool and came home shorn. It wasn't easy to control the Chang'an faction, but unfortunately, the Chang'an faction was suddenly investigated. This time, even Elder Long was implicated. At that moment, a young man suddenly rushed in. This man was Elder Long's personal guard. Even though he was not as strong as Old Ghost, he was definitely not simple. Most importantly, Elder Long had the intention of nurturing him. The young man was dressed very well, but his expression was rather cold. Elder Long had seen him as soon as he entered, and he seemed to have guessed what was going on. He waved his hand and signaled for the middle-aged man to leave. The middle-aged man didn't say anything and just silently left. The young man bent down and said in a low voice, "Old master, there's news from Ningbo." Elder Long frowned slightly. If Old Ghost had completed the task, he would have reported it to him on his own instead of getting the news from others. Therefore, Elder Long shook his head and said, "It doesn't seem to be good news. The people in Ningbo reported that the mission might have failed. The police have cordoned off the area and prohibited anyone from entering. At the same time, a large number of police officers have been mobilized to search the mountain. I don't know the other details, but the failure of the mission is also their guess," the young man reported truthfully. Elder Long's face was a little gloomy as he asked, "What happened to Qin Sheng?" "I don't know yet. I'm still inquiring about it. I've already arranged for the 2 people to leave Ningbo. The rest of the things have also been arranged. There won't be any clues," the young man said lightly. Judging from his words, one could feel that he was very experienced in handling affairs. Whether the task failed or succeeded, he had already figured out the countermeasures. Elder Long continued to ask, "How is the Qin family doing?" "Zhao Anji and Qin Ran returned home from the company half an hour ago. I didn't dare to take the risk to inquire about it, but I heard that they are not in good condition. I guess Qin Sheng's situation is not optimistic," the young man continued to say. At this time, Elder Long was lost in thought. No matter if the mission failed or succeeded, and no matter if Qin Sheng was dead or alive, they would have to face a fierce counterattack. Next, it would be the real time to fight. Although the situation was still unclear, he hoped that Old Ghost would not let him down. Otherwise, this fierce counterattack would be meaningless. After all, they would pay a high price, and it was very likely that their vitality would be greatly damaged. However, if Qin Sheng was not dead, they would really suffer a great loss. Therefore, in the end, Elder Long finally told the young man to keep a close eye on the situation in Ningbo and the Qin family from now on. Once there was any news, he should immediately report to him. Since the result had been obtained, Elder Long didn't need to continue to stay here. He declined the meeting with the big boss and directly went home to prepare for the following things. In Ningbo, the heavy rain had not stopped. The area where the incident happened had been tightly blocked. All the intersections were strictly controlled by the police. No one knew what had happened. The Lin family was indeed powerful. The whole Ningbo police had been dispatched. In order to find Qin Sheng's whereabouts, they began to carry out a carpet search. At the same time, both the Lin family and the Ningbo police had completely blocked the news. No one was allowed to disclose any information. Moreover, only a few people had access to the most important information, especially the specific identity of several people who had died at the scene, and so on. The Lin family was still waiting. He was waiting for the Qin family to arrive. In the West Mountain villa of the Qin family, Qin Ran finally called her uncle. In the end, Qin Ran still dialed her uncle's number. In the past, she would first discuss with her aunt about such matters and only contact her uncle or let her aunt contact her uncle after confirming the countermeasures. But today, Qin Ran couldn't care less. She chose to contact her uncle directly. Because it was a serious matter, and she needed to contact her uncle, she went into the study to make this call. Outside, Zhao Anji had already arranged things to go to Ningbo. In order to prevent any more accidents, Zhao Anji had mobilized all the forces of the Qin family this time. She directly called Gongsun, who was far away, and asked him to take Zhuangzhou, Nangong, and the others to put down their things and go to Ningbo immediately. Gongsun was wondering what had happened. Why was Zhao Anji so anxious? Zhao Anji said with mixed feelings, "Something happened to Qin Sheng." Gongsun reacted like everyone else. He was shocked for a long time. When he came to himself, Zhao Anji had already hung up. Gongsun didn't have time to explain to others. He immediately called Zhuangzhou, Nangong, Yujbak, and the others to gather at the airport. The others who received the call were also confused. But Gong Sun didn't explain to them. He didn't need to explain anything. When they arrived in Ningbo, everything would be clear. At least for now, he had to keep this secret. In the study, Qin Ran dialed that familiar yet strange number. It was familiar because it was her uncle. But it was strange because the number of times she contacted her uncle was getting less and less. Unless there was something serious, the younger generation didn't dare to disturb her uncle. After all, her uncle was in a high position. This was also the rule set by her grandfather and grandmother. The younger generation also had to abide by it. Otherwise, the consequences would be very serious. This was the family rule and the family education. In the past, before her grandfather retired, they had to make an appointment in advance every time they wanted to see her grandfather. Unless her grandfather wanted to see them, he wouldn't take the initiative to contact them. Later, when her grandfather retired, they could see her grandfather often. Later, when her grandfather passed away, her uncle was getting more and more powerful. Her grandmother continued this rule. So it was really difficult for them to see her uncle more than a few times a year. They also rarely called her uncle, unless it was her uncle who called them. But today she had to make this phone call. Qin Ran first called her uncle's office number. After a while, the phone was connected. It was the secretary of the office who answered the phone. She was not qualified to directly call her uncle's red phone, which was a taboo. After asking, Qin Ran knew that her uncle was not in the office. The secretary didn't disclose her uncle's schedule. This was also a rule, and Qin Ran naturally understood it. So, Qin Ran could only dial her uncle's phone. After a few seconds, the phone was connected. Qin Ran waited until the person on the other side of the phone spoke. Because she wanted to make sure that it was her uncle or the secretary who answered the phone. Because she didn't know whether her uncle was busy or not. "Hey, Ran, why did you suddenly think of calling me?" Fortunately, Zhu Weigua had just finished a meeting and was resting. Unexpectedly, he received a call from his niece. Qin Ran thought it would be the secretary or someone else. She wanted to ask them to give the phone to her uncle. But when she heard her uncle's familiar voice, Qin Ran couldn't bear it anymore. She burst into tears. Sob, Qin Ran cried very sadly. Because she didn't have a mother, and now she couldn't find her father. It seemed that she didn't even have a shoulder to shoulder. So when she heard her uncle's phone call, she was so unscrupulous. Seeing Qin Ran crying, Zhu Weigua panicked. He asked in a hurry, Ran, what's wrong with you? What's wrong? You should tell me first. Zhu Weigua didn't think much about it. He didn't think that something had happened to the old lady. Because if something had happened, the hospital would have contacted him directly instead of Qin Ran. Uncle. Qin Sheng is in trouble. Qin Ran almost finished this sentence in a choked voice. Although it was intermittent, Zhu Weigua still understood what was going on. After confirming what was going on, Zhu Weigua didn't panic at all. After all, as a person in a high position, he still had this bit of calmness. He quickly judged that it might be a bit serious. Otherwise, Qin Ran wouldn't have cried so sadly. However, everything was not clear yet. So after a long time, Zhu Weigua just said, I got it. Then he hung up the phone. Qin Ran's current state was not suitable for talking, so he could only contact someone else. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.